Good day. It is a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to working with you. During our time together, I humbly request you be wary of the language and content of your letter. It is of grave importance if you do not wish for younger readers to read its contents. Please also be forewarned of spoilers you may intend on sending to your recipient, particularly those of the drama Violet Evergarden. If you are hesitant to continue, please prepare ahead of time prior to requesting me. Lastly, I must inform you of anything I say, as it is my own personal opinion and does not pertain to my fellow auto-memory dolls at the Dubtalk Postal Company. If it is your wish, I will travel anywhere to meet your request. I am Auto Memory's doll, Stephanie Evergarden. May we begin?
Hello, fellow citizens. Thank you so much for requesting the Dubtalk Podcast to be your podcast of choice for tonight's discussion about Violet Evergarden, a new series from Kyoto Animation in association with Netflix. Things are going to look very, very pretty tonight, and are going to get a little bit emotional as we discuss in detail both the show's English dub as well as the contents of the show itself. Joining me tonight, I am leading the company, as we are joined by my fellow dolls who will be transcribing their feelings from paper to word of mouth. If it is your wish, we will go anywhere to meet your request. Auto Memories dolls, Amon.
Hello, I have a new typewriter. It's very nice.
Auto Memory doll, Lilac.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
And Auto Memory doll, Noah.
I'm just here to offer a hand tonight.
You broke the tone so quickly. You ruined it.
Already.
Am I already fired?
Yes. Why did you get hired again?
Because he's really good. Look, he got hired for the same reason he got married. He's good with his fingers.
Oh!
Okay, alright now.
Oh dear.
That is getting cut.
That's terrible.
You editor person, cut that.
Please cut that. That was a terrible joke.
I need a drink, god damn it.
While you're getting that drink,
Okay.
I think now's a good time to at least go into what Violet Evergarden is, and explaining a brief synopsis of the show itself.
It's a gardening show, right?
God damn it.
No.
It's
Go
like
get your
anime homes
drink.
and gardens.
Go get your drink.
Get your drink. Put your little binky in while the adults cover this, please.
Shh, the adults are talking, Noah.
Wow.
The Great War finally came to an end after 4 long years of conflict. Fractured in two, the continent of Telesis slowly began to flourish once again. Caught up in the bloodshed was Violet Evergarden, a young girl raised for the sole purpose of decimating enemy lines. Hospitalized and maimed in a bloody skirmish during the war's final leg, she was left with only words from the person she held dearest, but with no understanding of their meaning. Recovering from her wounds, Violet starts a new life working at CH Postal Services after a falling out with her new intended guardian family. There, she witnessed by pure chance the work of an auto memory doll, girls that transcribe people's thoughts and feelings into words on paper. Moved by the notion, Violet begins work as an auto memory doll, a trade that will take her on an adventure, one that will reshape the lives of her clients, and hopefully lead to her own self-discovery. So this show is interesting. It's got both an interesting history to it, as well as an interesting release schedule, so to speak.
Yeah.
The thing I feel notable is that Kyoto Ani does a lot of like book contests where a couple of times they will give out awards to books and promising titles that seem interesting to them. I know stuff like Amagi Brilliant Park, Kyokai no Kanata, etc. were Kyokai Kanata Beyond the Boundary,
What
as well.
You are such a weeb.
Oh, like you're wanting to talk. Point is,
But you're
the important thing is a couple of light novels that were honorable mentions for this KyoAni run light novel contest actually do go on to get their own anime adaptations at times. Violet Evergarden's interesting because it's the only book so far to actually ever win their coveted grand prize. So I was already interested alone just from the notion that this one series or this one light novel series actually was a grand prize winner in their contest. And what's interesting about this one is this show had a weekly release on Netflix with dubs in several languages for almost everywhere else around the world.
Except for here.
Except
in
for
the United States.
Also Australia, I think, but yeah, the United States didn't get that.
USA.
Because Violet Evergarden, the show itself aired back during the winter season, but the dub actually came to Netflix, back in June, I think?
No. The dub came out at the same time as episodes came out weekly.
I meant English.
Yes.
In English, it came out in April, the full
Okay,
series.
that's what I was referring to. Like, it came out in still in a short span of time by Netflix standards.
Oh, absolutely.
Say.
Yeah, okay, yes, I can agree to that.
Now, we could attest some of that, though, to the fact that Kyoto Animation works incredibly well with schedules, so they could actually have the materials ready to the dubbing studio to be done much faster than some other studios would.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we would have seen the same turnaround with Trigger with Little Witch Academia.
I'm pretty sure, like, KyoAni does stuff, like, there's stuff that's probably been done for a couple of months that's coming out in, like, a season or two. That's probably how they work.
I mean, probably, because you don't really see too often a lot of KyoAni shows. I think, like, what is it? It's Violet Evergarden and Freeze currently airing this summer, so
their output has actually been a lot bigger in the past year or two, and they've got a pretty decent schedule lined up. They're really making it big, and I'm proud of them for it. And their stuff still continues to look drop-dead gorgeous.
Oh my god.
But we're not here to discuss the drop-dead gorgeous look. We're here to discuss the audio.
We are here to discuss the English dub of this show. And starting off, we are here to talk about the show's dialogue directors for this project. And the dialogue directors for Violet Evergarden are Bob and Megan Buchholz. Bob Buchholz. Bushels?
It's pronounced, it's Bob and Megan Bushels.
Bushels.
I mean, I'll give you credit. If you see the spelling on the screen, people, you could easily not know which vowels are supposed to be pronounced which ways.
Thank you very much. Bushels. Bob has worked on such shows such as Knights of Sidonia, ID Zero, Blame, Devilman Crybaby, and Children of the Whales. And Megan has also helped out with Devilman Crybaby and Children of the Whales. Now,
which I still have to see.
There's a lot of stuff that gets released on Netflix that everybody needs to make time for, or probably never will. Who knows?
Yeah.
Amon.
So much anime, so little time.
Amon, would you like to start us off, sir?
Sure. Yeah, I enjoyed the direction on this show. I know Bob and Megan don't technically do the dub for every anime on Netflix, but it feels that way sometimes. They seem to be one of their preferred go-to studios for getting stuff done.
Specifically called Slice Bread Studios.
Yes. And if nothing else, they're better than that place that dubbed Ico, was it? That's terrible?
We don't talk about Ico.
Exactly.
Later, maybe.
So I obviously, like, clearly Netflix has a good relationship with them because they keep going back to them, and I liked a lot of what they did on this show. This is an interesting dub. It's very dramatic, obviously. This is a lot more dramatic than I'm used to watching KyoAni shows. My introduction to them was like Haruhi, and then much later like Nichijou. So this is. Wow. I never watched. Well, I mean, like I watched stuff in between, but like I never watched any of their like key visual novel stuff from early in their career. Oh. So like they're like I know they're a company who do weepy melodramas, but that is exclusively a genre I have never really watched from them. So this is a little bit of a first for me. And consequently, I think they did a very good job with this. This is a show that has a lot of emotional beats to it pretty much all the time. And you gotta hit those if you're gonna make this story work, because if it falls flat on its face, then it's just gonna feel like a big old waste of time. Like, why do I care about these people? And I think they did that. I thought this was very well directed. I thought it was very well cast. I thought they did a very good job, especially given that so much of the show is episodic and you're dealing with a lot of people who will show up for one 30-minute segment, and then you won't see them again for the most part. I thought they did a very good job of balancing that between them and the more recurring characters and having everything fit together. Especially given how the lead character is written, which I'll get to in her segment later. I was very impressed by this. I liked it a lot.
I have to agree with a lot of things that Amon just said, because this story, oh boy. If you don't feel any feels from this show, y'all are a monster. Though everybody's, of course, going to react differently to some of the dramatic, more emotional moments. Oh god. I'll admit, I bawled like a baby a couple times. There were parts of the show that really hit close to home for me, which probably will come up with a couple set of characters in a little bit. But yeah, I love the direction and writing. The writing seemed pretty straightforward. It wasn't 100% confined to historical period speak, because this is also a bit of an alternate reality or an alternate world in a sense. It's not like pure history, so there's some leeway with some of the dialogue and the speech patterns for the characters, which I liked. Direction wise is also very, very good. I enjoyed it immensely. I do have to nitpick though. So something I caught on to is if you see characters that are like more in a distance, that are in the background, and they're talking, there are times where the lip flaps don't match.
Really?
The biggest example I found from that was episode, I want to say it was 6, when Violet goes to the observatory. Yes, where Violet is speaking to Leon, and there was a moment. It was dark in background, but like from you, he's a bit of a distance off. But I could tell when he's speaking that sometimes when he pauses for like an extended period of time, the lip flaps are still going. And it's not the first time I noticed it too, because I noticed it, I believe, at least an episode or 2 before that with the same problem. But that's the one nitpick I have, and it's more of a technical issue. But otherwise, considering the themes of this show regarding loss and love and grief thrown in there too, this dub hit all of those points and very, very well. It's definitely one of my favorite English dubs I've seen so far this year, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
But it's probably more because I connected on it more personally.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's really hard to separate from, like, if you have a strong connection to the script and to the action on the screen, it's going to be hard to also say that you didn't like the dub to it as well.
Exactly. Like, even despite the little nitpick I had with the lip flaps, I'm just like, this is great. I love this. And this is coming from, because I didn't know an extreme amount about the show. I knew it was a thing that existed. I knew there was a lot of hype around it, but I kind of went into the show knowing the bare minimum. And I didn't let the hype that the show had from earlier in the year kind of cloud my judgment either. So I kind of, in a sense, I went into it with fresh eyes. And I think that's the best way to go into the show, is if you don't know much about it and you just put the hype aside or don't know anything about it, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to... I know there's been shows going into where I've had problems with that, but I can agree that if you can go in with that mentality, then that's the best way to go into
Absolutely.
it. We have a double conflict, really, in our profession, because we try to be in the know about all the new shows coming out,
right,
and what's the biggest thing to watch. So, of course, we're going to get spoiled to some things, but at the same time, it's like, how do you go into a show with fresh eyes, unclouded by that bias that you've heard about from everyone?
Exactly. It's a fine line to walk sometimes. It's very hard.
So this is, you mentioned before, Andrew, that this is adapted from a light novel series, and it is so obvious when you're listening to the show in dub that this was based on a novel, because the dialogue is long, prosy stuff about people contemplating their thoughts, long scenes of the camera kind of panning over a beautiful background while you hear the person talking in the background, because we don't want to just film someone talking all the time. That would be boring. And in adapting this for the English translation, I'd say that Bob and Megan, they really got the writing on it. I didn't have any qualms with any of the writing portions of it. The different characters are personified by the way that they're told to speak in ways that differentiate their backgrounds and their characters, like especially like how they relate to the war, because everyone is tied together in this country by the war. Some people were affected badly by it, some were pretty impartial to it, and others are still recovering from it. So the writing kind of helps to emulate that a lot. We'll get to specific characters as we go along, but yeah, as far as like, was it good or bad writing? It was good. This was very good writing, and I'm someone who really likes well-written dialogue that doesn't come off as just being read off of a script.
Me
So
too.
full thanks. This actually reminded me a whole lot of Hyoka, because Hyoka was also adapted from a light novel series
Absolutely.
by Kyoto Animation, and it kind of had the same fine line to walk of making the characters engaging with their long, wordy thoughts while still being well written, and it was.
Yeah.
That being said, I need to talk about the direction a little bit here. This show looks like a film, and it sounds like a film. There is this serious, stalwart tone that the directors gave to all the actors throughout that makes this sound like a theatrical production. And, like, you could say film, or you could even say, like, stage theatrical level. It is that level of seriousness, episode to episode. And I like that. It makes it stand out a bit from the serialized shows that we usually get, which this is still a serialized show, but it feels very much like it was like a long movie just broken up into 13 different broken points. The only thing I could complain about, and this is a bias of mine, is that I could sense the actors in the booth a lot of the times. Not for all the actors, but for a good chunk of them. I got the sense that I could feel actors speaking into a microphone.
Okay.
I like when I can feel when I can't feel the actors and the dialogue just comes through naturally. Naturally is not the right word. No. When the dialogue comes through and I forget that this is a constructed piece of media, I feel like I'm watching a documentary almost. I like that. But I think that might just be the fact that I've seen a few anime in my time, like 2 or 3 or something like that, and I'm just familiar with the tone and the regular way that anime voice actors sound is my problem. Okay. It didn't really take anything away from the overall performances. Like I said, the writing was very good. The acting was theatrical throughout. It was just that one thing where every once in a while I just stopped to think, I can see the actors standing in a booth in front of a microphone with headphones over.
And it kind of took you out of it, the moments here and there, I'm guessing.
It took me out of this. It's not a fantasy world, but this alternative history world, and back into the modern world.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I think oh yeah, by the way, I think I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Andrew, by the way.
We've been talking for almost a half hour, and you forgot to introduce yourself. Way to go.
Andrew.
It's just something that's it, okay?
No, that's it. We gotta start over again.
No,
we're not.
Welcome to the Dub Talk Podcast. This is
damn
the
it,
You stop that. You stop that.
Sit down.
All right. So, where I stand on the dub of this, I think, for the most part, there's a interesting ensemble cast. Like, you've got mostly a small group of reoccurring characters, and the majority of them are one-shots or one-off characters. Mm-hmm. And I feel a lot of, like, the majority of the main cast and a lot of the one-off characters, or at least the ones that stuck with me the most, I really, really liked their performances. I liked how they handled a lot of the range of emotions they were given, the spontaneity of certain scenes and certain changes, as well as gradually building into these characters and making you get into it. I agree, a lot of that was really solid and really well done, and there's a lot of characters, performances that I really liked. However, there was also a couple of, like, background characters or small bit parts here and there that I wouldn't say, like, I could envision them with a microphone, but it sounded like a little clunky to me, I guess, so to speak. It sounded a little less authentic or natural, like a couple people in the background, and
Basically, compared to, like, the major characters who were giving you these stellar performances, there were
Compared
some
to-
background, like, characters that kind of took you out of it a little bit.
there are some background characters.
Okay.
And this is also going to be a weird thing when I think I discuss it, but there are... Okay, so KyoAni has a very interesting, like, design style with a lot of these characters. Like, some of them, it's like, they're pretty unique to the world of Violet Evergarden, but a couple of them, it's like, I feel like I've seen this character or these character designs from similar stuff of theirs or things like that. Like,
Are you referring to the fact that some of the character designs make this show look like the bad future for free?
No. What?
I kind of got that a couple times, actually.
Look, what's his
Like-
name? Claudia looks enough like a character who could be in Free and looks haggard enough that I think, like,
Claudia
oh,
almost...
this is
Claudia
this is
looks
the
like
future
a
world.
bit of an adult Rin.
God damn it.
And then you have
God damn
And
Gilbert,
it's
it.
just,
who
it's
could
just
be
a feeling,
kind
it's
of
like,
like
oh,
Ray.
things went really bad for them in the future, didn't it? Oh dear.
So, okay.
Wow.
Two things. One, this wouldn't be the future. This would be an alternate past.
You
you
are
don't, you
correct.
don't know what
Yes.
happened in between now and then.
It's true.
Like,
They've
yeah,
lost
this
all
seems more like
technology.
It seems like alternate universe. This is more like a, what do you call it? A steampunk alternate universe past of the Free universe. And
What makes
anything
you
like that.
think?
But
What makes-
here's the thing. Here's the thing. The thing I was gonna say is there's a couple of characters where I feel like just looking at some of these designs and hearing some of the voices, it feels like there is a disconnect for at least one or two of them. There's one specifically I'll talk about later, but
I
it
think I
feels
know which
like
one you're talking about too.
it feels like there's like one character where it's like they look too young and sound way too old. Maybe this character is actually supposed to sound this way,
Okay.
but something about their design just does not make me believe I would hear this voice out of this design.
I
so
feel
to
like
speak.
I know exactly which character you're thinking of.
Okay. But outside of that, and that was like a minor gripe, but I really do like a lot of the core performances, and a lot of the ones I wasn't too crazy about at first did eventually grow on me, and some of them are just truly stellar.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we are ready to move on to our first set of characters. Our first set of characters is... There's a lot... You know how this is a light novel? Because there's a lot of really weirdo, pseudo-fake Japanese European names in here.
Hey, I'll give
'Cause-
him credit for at least one for a blonde-haired character that we're going to talk about. They did not name her Alice. That in itself is a minor miracle.
Thank God.
But for now, we're going to talk about Luculia Marlborough and Charlotte Abelfreya Drossel. Luculia
Wow,
is
good job.
Luculia is another auto memory doll in training alongside Violet in episode 3, who's trying to get a job and move forward after the death of her parents during the war, and her brother, who was a former soldier, turned drunkard after being discharged and the war being older. Charlotte Abelfreya Drossel, yes, we could say that name to show off, is a princess who is supposed to marry somebody from a former rival nation, and their marriage will be very significant to the unity and prosperity of them, but there's a contrast about what she wants and what people expect from her. So, playing the two of these characters is playing the role of Luculia is Kira Buckland. Kira Buckland you'll have heard as such characters as Mary Saotome from Kakegurui, Mueta from Kuro Mukuro, Avery from Little Witch Academia, Sanakan from Blame, and Naoka Ueno from A Silent Voice. Playing the role of Charlotte is Stephanie Sheh, who has played such characters as Cyborg 003 from Cyborg 009 vs. Devilman, Lotte from Little Witch Academia, Scheherazade from the Magi series, Mackenzie Mack, aka Glitter Spade from Glitter Force Doki Doki, and Mikuru Asahina from the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya.
Supersize me!
Oh god.
Damn it.
Little reference
Thank you.
for all you
Thank you,
old
Kristen.
Hero Otaku.
Amon, would you like to tell the people what you thought of Kira and Stephanie as Luculia and Charlotte?
Sure. This will be fun because I watched both of these episodes like 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
They're, look, you guys binge shows. I start as early as possible.
I binge shows.
Yours
I
works a
don't
lot
have-
better.
No, I binge shows and I don't have the fucking time. That's me.
We're
Neither
going
do
to
I.
test the memory of Amon duel.
Anyways. So it's been a while, but my recollection is that I did enjoy both of these performances. Let's see. I liked Kira as
Luculia.
Thank you, Luculia. I liked Luculia. I thought Luculia was fun in that first episode as kind of a little bit of a viewpoint character for us, the audience, kind of getting to know Violet. And I just like what she brought to the role. Like she had this very nice, not normality, I guess, but she seemed like a very confident, typical person. And I like the way that she played who's this weird blonde lady who's like really talented but talks like a robot. And what's her deal? And I like the way she played her relationship with Violet. I like the way she played her relationship with her brother, who she cares about, but he's got a lot of issues, and should probably stop getting into bar fights.
War fucks you up.
Oh yeah, no. It's a pretty. It's a very pretty show, which is partially about how war is really bad. You should probably not do that.
Yeah.
I liked this sense of kind of strength, but also this vulnerability as somebody who has had to kind of pull herself up, and also kind of try and bring her brother up as well after all the trauma he's endured. And I really enjoyed her performance. I thought it was very pleasant to listen to. It was really nice. And my recollection is Stephanie Sheh did a similarly nice job with Charlotte. Who's got a different set of problems. She has to marry this dude from the kingdom of Flugel.
The
I'm
fact
glad
you
you-
remember that name.
I forgot the Flugel part. I like how you're saying I have trouble recollecting
That's
a lot of this.
because I'm looking at the Violet Evergarden wiki to remember who these people are.
He came prepared, ladies and gentlemen.
Damn it,
this is what you
Amon,
do.
stop ruining the illusion.
No,
Professional.
I will ruin whatever illusion I want to.
I do what I want.
To be honest, I don't blame you. It's important
Anyway.
stuff to remember.
Also, sidebar, you did a very good job with your fake European names. Most of them sound authentic, and only a few of them sound funny. So, good job, writer of the light novel. You did pretty well.
You say as we're talking about a girl whose goddamn last name is a cigarette.
Drossel's a name for a thrush, I think.
Luculia
Marlboro, yeah, never mind.
Marlboro.
Sorry, that's
He's
right.
talking about Luculia.
The
I'm
majority of our
sure-
listeners are going to think cigarettes.
I'm sure Marlboro used to be a real name at one point. Anyways, but your
You
point
see, I'm
stands.
thinking Marlboro as this town in Massachusetts right now.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true
Okay.
for Amon and I.
Now
right.
that I've completely derailed the conversation, I enjoyed Stephine as Charlotte, who I liked the sort of sense of innocence, but also frustration as somebody who doesn't want to do this, but sort of recognizes why it's important, and has to spend a lot of time kind of struggling with that decision of I don't want to do this. I don't like how my life is changing. And I thought she did a nice young girl voice for the character, which obviously Stephanie Sheh is generally good at. That's why you cast her in roles like this. What else? I like the bit she had with her tutor, her nanny,
Alberta.
Alberta. Yeah, just just those kind of scenes, I thought they were very well done. Coming back to like how a lot of this sounds like a dramatic film, I thought that this is one of those examples of how well the like director and cast were able to sort of nail the dramatic aspects of selling all the emotional content that's in this series. A lot of which often gets like introduced, developed, and concluded in a fairly short amount of time. So I was impressed by that as well. Yeah, these were both very good performances in my book.
All right, Steph, what'd you think of Charlotte and Luculia?
I didn't actually write any notes for these two because I found out we were talking about them after I watched these episodes. But what I can say, in terms of Kira as Luculia, first of all, she has a cool fucking name. No, that's not what I want to say. This is one of the more mature sounding roles I've heard Kira perform with, because I'm used to her being with voicing characters that have a lot more spunk and energy to them.
Bratty Sundares.
Basically, yes. The prime one in my head that I'm thinking of as an example is her name is Belle. Belle from Blood Lad, where she has a lot of spunk and energy and sass to her, but Luculia is very more mature compared to some of the other characters in this show. And considering everything that Luculia has experienced and gone through, it shows that she had to grow up into an adult rather quickly, because she also has to take care of her brother Spencer too, while he's coming to terms and trying to figure out what he's gonna do, because Spencer blames himself for the death of their parents, actually. So she's taking the necessary steps forward to move forward with her life and achieve new goals, all the while taking care of her Spencer. And that story actually was really good, and I loved Kira's performance in it. And as for Stephanie as Charlotte, that story was very interesting because when you it does take the classic like story trope of arranged marriage or loveless marriage and kind of has its own spin on it. Where, because the job that Violet has is she's writing these public love letters for Charlotte to her fiance, Damien. And it turns into a very interesting dynamic with Charlotte and whoever plays Damien, because we don't have confirmation in that. Where they start writing their own letters to each other. It becomes like the most hilarious argument in the world. It's great. And
basically, for a while, it's just kind of like two dolls who are just kind of writing this back and forth, being like, my dearest one, you make my heart to flutter.
Yes.
It was like...
But then Violet was like, because of Charlotte's worries, Violet was like, she decides to go to Fugle, because we find out at the end of the episode that it was, her boss, Catalea, who was writing for the prince. They're like, let's do this. They're gonna write their own letters, and we're just gonna advise them on it. So,
which allowed that to progress more naturally.
Yes. And that was so it kind of turned this classic story of like, is this a loveless marriage, this arranged marriage going on, kind of gives it a twist to it. And Stephanie's concerns and worries about it being a loveless marriage, when you clearly know that she cares about her betrothed, that she went to great lengths for it to be accepted that she be betrothed and eventually marry this man. And that performance was very nice. Though the funniest thing in the world to me, and I think I mentioned this to Andrew. I can't remember if I mentioned it to everybody last night. I know I mentioned this to Andrew. When Charlotte meets up with Damien again in the flower garden at night, and well, I think part of it's through the letters, where she confesses that she's a crybaby. We all know that Stephanie Sheh also is Usagi, aka Sailor Moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, here's my thing. I started getting flashbacks of Sailor Moon, and because we don't know who Damien is confirmed to be, unfortunately, and the credits do not help us at all. My brain, I was listening to her exchange with Damien, I'm like, is this Robbie Damon? Are we having a Sailor Moon tuxedo mask moment here? Is this what happened? Oh my god. Andrew thinks it's Max Middleman, but I think it's Robbie because it'd be the funniest thing in the world. But but yeah, I kind of got a kick out of it. I'm like, if this is actually a thing that happened, you clever bastards. You clever bastards. But yeah.
So what you're saying is you like Stephanie Sheh.
I do. It was definitely a fun performance as a princess, a young princess who's rather unsure about going into a possibly loveless marriage, and she wants to know if he has the same feelings for her as she does for him. So I enjoyed it a lot, but still, it'd be the funniest thing if it was true. If it was Robbie Gaynor, that'd be funny.
You know what would be really
Noah?
funny about that is talking about Charlotte and Damien for a second there. They both work the words garden and moon into their letters, which is all a reference just because they met each other first in the garden under the moon.
Yep.
But if this is really a Tuxedo Mask Sailor Moon reunion, then that would have even more meaning.
Yup.
Roses and the moon.
Yup.
Ha!
Yup.
All right.
Makes you
Take my
wonder.
tinfoil hat off for a second here.
Take that hat off, young man. We got work to do.
I want to talk. First, I want to talk about Kira Buckland. Because just like Lilac, I mostly associate Kira with spunky, hyperactive characters. The one I know her best from is actually Madoka from Lagrange, the Flower of Rene. So hearing her in this more relaxed tone is refreshing. Because you take the voice, and it's nice to hear that the actor can do other voices as well. Which I know Kira can do a lot of voices. So, but it's always nice to hear her when she's in a dub. So for this one, though, she seemed to give the character of Luculia a West Coast dialect. Like we kind of mentioned at the top that they don't really give British accents to any of these characters, which is good, because if one character had a British accent, they'd all have to have them. So in this sense, Kira gives Luculia this almost West Coast dialect with a gentle demeanor, and it's like she kind of like rolls her syllables around a little bit. Like I was listening to her dialogue, and I wish I wrote one line down to use as an example, but her syllables just kind of like they roll around a little bit, like a rolling ball or a spinning ball when you hear them, which
Interesting.
I had to visualize her speaking patterns, but it's much different from, like, she's not royalty like Charlotte, she's not a war hero like Violet. So, she's there's a more country voice to her with that, like I said, more West Coast dialect. And that helped differentiate her from all the other characters. And she does not lose that when she gets more up in arms about her brother's personality, or in being flabbergasted by Violet's personality. Like, there's a scene where both Violet and Luculia have to ghostwrite for each other. And it's in that moment that we get some of Kira's acting to personify, this girl is weird, is what she's thinking about Violet, but I'm fascinated by her, but she's weird, but I admire her, but she's really weird. So, and I kind of wish that Kira had been in more episodes, that Luculia had been in more episodes, because she's a very she's a good exemplar of what I think normal people, you can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes here, normal people in this world are like.
What you're saying is she's basically interesting because she's an outsider looking in at this almost strange, fictitious person that is Violet.
No, I'm not, because all the characters view Violet with a bit of absurdity. Like, they're looking at her like she's a bit of a marvel, especially when she takes the gloves off. But what I like about Kira, and I'm going to use this what I like about Luculia, and I'm going to use this to transition into Charlotte, is that every episode is designed to build the world, is to help us understand the rules, the setup, the customs, the mentality of this country that we're in. So Luculia kind of exists to show how people become auto memory dolls, the demand for them, and kind of like why someone would get into that, because they're somewhere between a secretary and a transcriber in terms of job positions. So that being said, Charlotte the entire episode is meant to show us how the politics of this world work, because we knew going into it that it was a monarchy. They still use kings and queens. And in this episode, we kind of understand, now that the war's ended, what does the royalty do? And Charlotte kind of offers us almost like a twist on the Marie Antoinette mentality of a woman, of a spoiled princess who doesn't want to get married because I don't want to be tied down. No, she's a very devoted individual. She takes the time to understand the diplomacy between the two countries. She understands the severity of representing her people in this unity and why it would offer so much stability to the two countries for the two of them to get married. That being said, like you said, Lilac, she wants to understand that she's not going into a loveless marriage, and that's where I'm really surprised by Stephanie's performance. Although, this is a voice I don't think I've heard on her before, because, and my notes here just say, is there something in the back of her throat? Because she's got like this slight falsetto, like she's trying to push even higher than Stephanie's normal high voices. It just threw me off a little bit. But, you know, this is a character that's a lot younger, and she even admits herself she's a crybaby, so I guess we're permitted to have a bit of a higher speaking voice as well.
I think it's actually really interesting, since I guess I'll transition to Charlotte first as part of my discussion. I find it interesting because it's like, I think she does sound like a lower tone than you usually expect for Stephanie playing this kind of character. It seems like a little bit sassier, and I guess sometimes a little more done with people's shit, or she just kind of wants to sleep her days in every now and then, and she doesn't want to deal with the princessy stuff. But you find out more about like her vulnerabilities and like the feelings she has, how she wants this to be something that works, and she's afraid of what'll happen, or if people just assume I am just doing this because I'm forced to. But it's like, no, this is something I do want to try, I do want to work towards. So when it actually does become her and Damien writing the letters, I think it's a really, really interesting. You see a little more of her natural like happiness go in, as well as a little more of her playful side. Also her competitive side too. See, you're talking about the thing in the garden that's funny. No, one of the parts that I thought was amazing was where they're talking about, it's like, they're being honest, I am a bit selfish. Sometimes I may not always be with you. Sometimes I may wish to go out in the field and go hunting, and I know that is not a lady's thing. And it's like, what makes you think that I wouldn't want to go hunting? It's like,
don't underestimate me.
Don't underestimate
that was cute.
me. I'd be all going for hunting. Hell, I could even be a better shot than you. And one of the things is, because this is like, basically the tabloids is just like rich butler people being like, a decree from the princess, and you see everybody reading that and reading the newspapers. Everybody's getting into that part. They're like, ooh, this is getting juicy. Oh,
it's becoming like a reality show in a sense.
It basically is a reality show in a sense, and that's what's really interesting. It's a lot sassier and a lot like deeper tone, but it seems also more like playful. It's like, I guess I used the word sassy already. It's an interesting demeanor for seemingly what could have just been a very high-pitched, dainty princess character that was a lot more interesting and engaging than I was expecting, and I really enjoyed Stephanie's performance of it. Kira, I thought, also did a really good job as Luculia. Like, she usually does play like a little, like, I guess, like tsundere or a little more like arrogant characters, but she can do really like sweet, kind people too, and I think this is a really good one. And you see both like her friendliness, her drive to try and get better, as well as some of her inner turmoil with the stuff she's dealing with her brother and trying to move forward with that. I think Kira does a really good job at making that sound conventional, and I think she is pretty good. She shows up like 2 more times in the show, but she's one of the ones that actually does get to come back again. Most everybody else is a one and done, save for like one scene at episode 9. Though, I think we're good with this group of characters, correct?
Yeah, this is they're good standalone characters, and I think it's I've heard a lot of people say that they actually like the standalone characters more than they like the more central casts.
The more narrative story stuff. I've also heard that. I can see why.
So let's not focus on the narrative people. Let's talk about more standalone characters. Can we do that? Yay!
We can, and we'll talk about probably some of the more interesting ones to me, in my honest to God
Now, when you say
opinion.
Interesting, do you mean heartbreaking?
Oh, God.
You fucking
Read
betcha.
between the lines, people.
All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about 2 characters. We're going to talk about Oscar Webster and Anne Magnolia. Oscar is a critically renowned playwright who Violet goes to help him write his first ever children's play when he's in a bit of a rut. And Anne Magnolia is a little girl whose mother sends for Violet to come help her out for an entire week and help her mother write letters while her mother is a little bit sickly in bed. And I could also briefly mention the mother is played by Wendy Lee. But playing Oscar and Anne, playing Oscar is Joe Oakman, who plays such characters as Endorf from Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, Paul Hanbridge from Little Witch Academia, Hasaguchi from Ajin, and the Azure King from Bungo Stray Dogs. Playing the role of Anne is Cassandra Lee Morris. Cassandra Lee Morris has played such characters as Neri from Children of the Whales, Alice from ID0, Annabelle Cream from Little Witch Academia, and Red Saber, aka Nero, from Fate Extra Last Encore. So, Amon, what did you think of these two characters?
Readers, I hope you have tissues handy. It's gonna get sad.
Oh yeah.
Real sad.
Oh god.
No, these were two very good performances, I thought. So both these episodes are huge bummers.
What are you talking about?
I want to answer you literally, but I know you know. You know.
He's just being a smartass. We all know.
But yeah, I thought these were both great. I really enjoyed Joe as Oscar. He did such a good job, especially in the beginning, of presenting this guy as somebody who is just so tired, and nothing has gone right, and he is just tired. He doesn't have the energy to deal with it anymore. I'm gonna hire this lady to type out my manuscript because I don't have the energy to do anything except lie down and drink heavily. And I thought he just brought that quality to it so well of just how set his depression was at the start of that episode. And then also being able to, when he's flashing back to happier times, being able to sell that aspect of it, and just how much he misses his family, who's no longer around anymore. It was a really good performance, and I especially think this episode needed that. I feel like if you had not cast somebody as Oscar who could pull off the emotional range the episode requires, the whole thing would have just fallen flat on itself, and it wouldn't have been nearly as good. And I've sort of similar thoughts on Cassandra playing Anne, which she doesn't have quite the same range just because her character is a lot younger. It's a lot more of there's a giant doll outside. And then wondering, why can't I hear my mom more?
By the way, little thing. I like that her being a young child, when she hears about a doll coming, she's one of the few people who makes the not unrealistic assumption that this is a real-life doll.
Yep.
No, I also found that very amusing.
Even after the show's done, I'm not entirely convinced she's not.
Even then... why are the fact that they're called dolls is strange to me? Just because when I heard that, I assumed she was like a lady robot when the show was first described to me.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of these things that's in the light novels and it never made it the adaptation. Like it's a holdover for dictation machines or something like that. They used to be mechanical, but now people do it. I don't know.
Okay, please continue.
Anyways, yeah, no, I thought she did such a wonderful job of playing this sweet girl who just wants to see her mom, who's been in bed a lot, and mom's a little too sick to hang out with her, so I'm gonna play with Violet, and Violet, let's do stuff together, because it's nice having someone around the house who's not just the maid who kind of wants me to just stay out of trouble. And then things get sad, really sad, heartbreakingly sad. And I thought Cassandra just did a wonderful job of nailing that, and it never felt like saccharine or forced, or like all the emotions felt very earned, and especially given the plot line of that episode, I feel like that's very important. Like this, I feel like this one could have very easily veered into like cheap, weepy melodrama, and I was very impressed that it didn't on a writing level, and I think the acting very much backed that up. And I think Cassandra, as being more or less like the lead of that episode, I think was essential to that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I like both these performances a lot.
All right, Steph, I agreed that you'll go last for this segment. Noah.
Yeah, okay, I want to talk about Anne first, because when I first watched this the show, I didn't look up who the characters were before watching the episodes. Like, I wrote down the cast list as I was watching the show, so I didn't know who they had actually cast as Anne while I was watching it. And I could have sworn that I thought they had actually cast a child for this one, because Cassandra has this uncanny ability to not just sound vocal-wise like a child, but she also has the inflections and the muddled speech patterns of a child. Like, as someone who lives in a house with a 5-year-old who is, still learning how to speak elegantly, that there are like little quirks, little ways to deliver dialogue that you feel like only comes off well from a kid. And I don't know how Cassandra does that. Either she is still herself an immortal child, or she's just studied how children speak very well. But she did Anne's really well. It was the one of the most convincing adults playing children roles I've probably heard in a very long time. As for the actual content of it, yeah, her inability to accept that Violet is an actual human being, and continuously treats her like a doll to play with is very amusing throughout the entire episode. Like, when you drink, where does the tea go? Like, that kind of attitude.
Eventually, it will leave my body and go back to the earth.
And then she's just like, oh.
And then she realizes by the time Violet leaves, like, wait.
Oh.
Hold on, she means the bathroom.
She's like that image of Popico where it's like, I understand.
It doesn't.
Doesn't really understand.
Yes.
Yeah, she
yes.
was the whole episode kind of hinges on not seeing the twist at the end coming. And by having the episode entirely focused on Anne's, her shenanigans, it kind of threw me off to what was actually going on. Like, why her mom actually hired Violet in the first place. So, I know, Andrew, you said that you kind of figured out the twist kind of coming before it was over.
Like midway through, the first assumption you as the viewer think is her father died in the war. So you assume this is like a letter she is writing to her dead husband as a sort of like way of grieving or coming to it. But when that's what I first assumed it was going to be.
That's the thing.
But then,
I was going the same line, and then I figured out partway through, like, no, this is what's
Once she's yelling at her mom about not spending time with her, I'm like, these are all for her.
Yep.
Or like, this is for her.
Okay.
This is a letter
for
her.
I didn't get that until the twist actually happened. I was sucker punched by it.
See the twist for me is I didn't know that the mom was having letters written, like a bunch of letters written for every
that's
year.
the thing. I assumed it was one
realize.
letter.
Yeah.
I assumed it was like one letter and she needed a lot of time to workshop it. The part I never caught on to, the fact that she wrote 50 years worth of letters.
Yep, that's the part I didn't catch.
That got me heavily. Not just because I didn't see it coming,
but
because
that fucked me up.
My mom actually did something similar to that. She actually wrote a letter for me when I was first born that I was not allowed to read. Like, she didn't even tell me she wrote it until I was 18. So there was like that 1-2 sucker punch of it. It's like, oh my god, yes, I know how that feels. Like, for all I know, she wrote another letter that I won't get until I'm 50. I don't know, but yeah, that decision, that act for your children, really conveys the importance of communication. Like, how many of us actually would love to get a handwritten note in the mail? Not an email, not a text, not a tweet, but an actual letter in the mail.
Yeah.
That would just break our goddamn hearts. So yeah, that whole episode, my favorite episode was that episode. And I should probably talk a little bit about Oscar now, shouldn't I?
Probably.
Yes, you should.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep this brief then, because on the paper I am holding in front of me, I do not have any notes written for Joe, actually. And I'm sorry, but it's because this was an episode that kind of washes over you. And I should probably point out that the reason why I like the show a lot, so much so that I can actually forgive some of the flaws, which we will talk about, is because it's all about writing. It is a show for people who appreciate writing, like not just like dialogue, not just script writing, but actual words like prose, poetry, flowery language, or simple, deep language. It's something for them to appreciate, because all the characters that are like interacting with Violet find themselves drawn to the power of words throughout this whole show. So Oscar's performance, like Joe's performance as Oscar, is entirely hinged on that one writer who has hit a wall in his life. And as someone who has, tried to do my own writing and still enjoys writing for the fun of it, I've known that personality, and Joe conveyed that without being too dour, without being too crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not
God
heal.
damn it! You really went with a Linkin Park reference.
I thought like it was either that or I had a sonnet somewhere, but I didn't write it down.
Oh my god!
So, but anyways, really worn down mentality. It's a believable kind. It's the kind of, he's a creative soul who's doing what he loves, or is what he's good at also, but is just stuck at a wall, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do but keep drinking until you get to the bottom of the bottle. And Joe pulls it off well. Like, I didn't write any notes down, but he did it good. There wasn't anything standoutish about it. Like, I don't think this was one of the more standout performances, but it was good enough for what the role called for.
I disagree on the fact of not being a standout, because I think once everything kind of washes over him that he's been feeling and not realizing, that's when I really feel like he pulls some legitimate emotional chops, and I was very, very impressed with the way he delivered it. As for the rest of Joe's performances, he just sounds like, I think Amon had said, he just sounds extremely noticeably tired. Like, he's worn out, he is hit a rut, his house is a mess, he doesn't care anymore, he drinks to wake, he drinks to sleep, that kind of thing. And it's really interesting that he sounds rugged and beat down. Like, he doesn't sound like bitter or angry, but he just sounds tired. And when he does write, he does get more into it, and the conflict about the way Violet reminds him of his daughter and the feelings he has, or the things he was afraid he couldn't say, or never got to say, or never will say again, because what happens to his daughter. Like, he loses his wife, and then he loses his kid due to an illness, and that's something that affects him. Just the way he delivers it is very gruff, but understandably like rugged, and so it's like realistic. And when he comes to that realization, when Violet does that thing where he takes a phrase he says, like a turn of phrase, and it's just like, just imagine like trying to jump across this river and fly with your parasol. That would be something. He's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then it takes him a second. Wait, what? No. You stop doing that. What are you doing? And then he has like a eureka moment of, oh my god, of all the things he misses of his daughter, all the things he wanted to say, all the things, and it just comes pouring, and it's really good.
That scene was so pretty.
Pretty and heartbreaking.
There's water splashing, and she's like stepping on a leaf and leaping into the air, and there's like 500 frames a second, and it's so beautiful.
Every time KyoAni fucks with water, it looks gorgeous. God damn. Honestly, I think that is my personal favorite episode of the show, to be honest. I strongly feel that way. That being said, Cassandra as Anne, which, as a personal thing that's amusing to me, I like the fact that, okay, so in Persona 5, there is a character named Morgana, played by Cassandra Morris, who has a crush on a character named Anne. I find it particularly funny that Morgana is now playing a little girl named Anne. That'll also get really funny when we discuss Asserted Somebody later on. Now, I find it interesting that you mentioned that, because usually when I hear Cassandra, like, she plays, I think, more, like, stoic or, I guess, gruffer girls, like something like a little quieter or a little gruffer, more tomboyish characters, or just young boy characters in general. Like, there's something about the way her tone is, like, makes me think of her characters like Taiga or the like that, or Morgana, who is a male character but has this, like, tomboyish, like, rambunctiousness. This is just straight up, like, girly girl who likes dresses and things, and she has a surprisingly higher pitch than I think I am typically used to hearing from her, and I find that really interesting. It's lighter, and it's really interesting, and she sounds so cute and fun and so ready to play, but when she does let her heart out and she talks about what she's really been feeling, it's very heartbreaking and very, very touching. And I adore her interactions with Violet. Just the dynamic between those two characters is really, really precious and interesting. And it's a nice contrast to this very hyper-energetic girl who just wants to play and do stuff all the time, to this much more reserved, cool, collective character. And I think that's a really nice dynamic. And I think Cassandra plays this character spectacularly.
Sweet.
All right, Steph?
Oh, boy.
Wait, hold on. Here's a box of tissues for you. Here's a box for you. Here's 3 boxes for you.
Thank you.
Right.
I might need it. I apologize in advance if I start crying. And I say that because, if anything, these episodes really, really hit home for me. And I'll probably explain why in a second. But, I'm going to talk about Cassandra Leaf Morris first, as Anne. She's an adorable, rambunctious little girl who just wants to spend time with her mom, and she portrays that very, very nicely, where she's just trying to... She knows more about the situation, what's going on. She knows what's going on with her mom. You can't deny that. You can see it in the character, and as well as in Cassandra's performance, where all she wants right now is just to be with her mom. And she sees Violet as someone who's taking that time away from her. And it's very, very moving, Cassandra's performance, seeing this little girl wanting to be with her mom, and then by the end we see her slowly, like, transitioning and growing up as these letters that her mom had written are being read.
That's so sweet.
Ugh. It was really good. I love the performance a lot. This is the hard part. So Joe as Oscar. This episode, I think, resonated with me a lot more, to the point where I finished this episode 7 last night, and I ended up crying an extra 20 minutes. I couldn't watch anymore that night. And a lot of it has to do with this performance because, oh boy. So, I don't typically talk much about very, very personal stuff going on, but some of Oscar's story really hit home for me because, my grandfather, he's 84 years old, and he was diagnosed a year or 2 ago with dementia. But he, earlier this year or late last year, my mom went with him and my grandmother to the doctor, and found out that he has, I should say, stomach cancer. And it really, really hits because my grandparents don't know that he has stomach cancer. And part of that reason is because when my mom was talking to the doctor, it came down to, do we want to put him through all of this treatment, possibly make him suffer more than he already is, especially at his age, or do we just think about quality of life and just let it go? And my mom had decided just to prefer quality of life rather than just letting him go through some sort of treatment, especially at his age. And it's becoming a thing where we obviously don't know how long he's gonna be with us. And what sucks even more is I was actually on the phone with my mom earlier the day before I watched this episode, and she mentioned to me, because he's actually on and off for the past few weeks been sick and throwing up, and the EMTs were actually called last week to my grandparents' house, and she spoke to the doctor, and he said that the next time that happens, make sure you go to the ER, because it could have something to do with the stomach cancer. And it just really hurts, because it's heavily implied that Oscar's daughter, at least in my mind, with the hair loss and the hat she's wearing partway through, to me it translates into cancer of some sort. So it really hit very hard for me, because my grandparents helped raise my sister and I when my parents were divorced, and they were always across the street, and he always has this energy and this happy attitude, and he still does. But I visited them a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately you can tell he's slowly deteriorating, and it really, really sucks, in all honesty. And I obviously we don't know how much longer he's gonna be here, and yet he, even with his dementia, even with the cancer going on right now, he's still this happy person. He still knows who I am, even though I'm so far away and I don't get to go home much. And it just really, really, really sucks for me. And how Joe manages to portray this grieving father, it really, really moved me in a way, to the point where, obviously, as you can hear by how I sound right now, it was very, very powerful for me. It really hit home, and it was definitely one of my favorite. It was definitely one of, if not my favorite episode of the show, because of how personal it got for me. And god damn it. Ugh, god damn.
It's okay.
This performance, I'm having my moment right now. It's the fact that it's something I'm going through right now with my grandfather. And because the only people who know about the stomach cancer right now are myself, my mom, my stepdad, and my sister. My grandparents don't know. We haven't really told any other family. The only reason why I'm throwing it in this podcast, despite that, is not really anyone in my family that really listens to the podcast, so I feel like I'm okay.
But Lilac, I thought we were your family.
Family by blood. Shut your mouth.
Point being,
I was trying.
the point being, this felt like a place to be able to talk about
Right.
that, also in part with the episode itself. Got it.
Basically, yes. But
And yeah,
yeah, this really, really hit home for me, with what's going on with my family right now. Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to both Joe's performance of Oscar as well as Violet and the performance for that episode. So, I mean, for some of you guys, I know you're saying that Joe's performance may not have stood out to you as much. It definitely stood out for me, but more for personal reasons. But yeah.
okay.
Also, I found out why they're called dolls.
Why?
Oh,
According to the Violet Evergarden wiki, it is established in the light novels that basically there's an inventor dude and his wife was a novelist and she went blind and she was really depressed about it. So he basically just made a little machine that you speak into it and it types up a document based on what you talk. And that's what an auto memories doll is originally, and now at this point that name is now applied to like humans who do the same thing.
Interesting. Okay.
now see, I would really have thought that they would have like worked that into the main show somewhere.
That's what it's. Adaptations are weird.
All right. Next, we will be covering two fellow auto memory dolls that work with our main character Violet, Erica Brown and Iris Canary. Play.
Very on the nose names.
Very on the nose names indeed. Erica Brown is played by Christine Marie Cabanos, and Iris Canary is played by Jeremy Lee. Christine Cabanos has played such characters as Zuru from Blame, Sammy from Children of the Whales, Claire Hojo from ID Zero, Rita from Kuro Mukuro, and Ranny the Eighth from Fate Extra Last Encore. Jeremy Lay has played such characters as Katarina Kaledia from Cyborg 009 Call of Justice, Mikiko aka Mikio Kawamoto from Devilman Crybaby, Regina from Glare Force Doki Doki, Maya Mikuri from ID Zero, and Yukina Shirahari from Kuro Mukuro. Amon, what did you think of these two performances?
I think I both enjoyed them. I don't have as much to say about Christine's performance just because Erica is a very quiet character and just does not say a lot in the show, at least to my recollection. What you did say I did enjoy. Like, I do think she got across that sort of quiet timidness to the character. I did like the bit in the last episode where it becomes very obvious that she wrote her little letter to was it Benedict, I think?
I think it was
I'm
Benedict.
pretty sure it is. It
was
seems
Benedict.
heavily implied it's Benedict.
Which I thought was very cute, and I thought Christine played well. But yeah, I don't have a lot specific to say, just because like Erica doesn't do a super lot. Christine was pretty good where it came up, though. However, I have a lot more to say about Jeremy Lee, because
The greatest auto memory doll in the city.
Iris.
So she says.
so she.
So she says.
I liked a lot of her. I enjoyed Iris's character. I liked her sort of, peppy spunkiness, especially in the episode where she and Violet go back to her hometown, and you get a lot of that contrast between Iris's and Violet's personality. I thought she just did. I liked her. Like, I liked all this confidence she exuded while she's in the city, and then especially in that episode where she has to go back home, where she's just some kid. And everyone's a little condescending about the whole, oh, you live in the city and you have a job now. That's very nice. Don't you want to marry this nice man and move back home? Come on, we know you want to. Come on. Come back. I thought she did a good job of, like, sort of balancing out, like, this is her family. She cares about them. She's also deeply frustrated with them, and they don't get it. And that's irritating. Sorry, this is also one of the episodes I haven't seen in a while.
It was the whole thing with the family.
No,
and
I
the birthday
remember
party.
what happens and trying to come up more salient points about the performance. Like,
Come on, and see the amazing Amon remember an episode from 2 weeks ago. $5 a ticket.
just be sitting on a stool with sort of my fingers pressed against my forehead.
It's like
There was
What
a
is-
fight during a barbecue.
about some guy that she didn't want invited to the party. Who apparently he was almost named Amon as well. His name was Amon.
Oh
you
my
know how
God.
it is.
It's like, Amon, you're in the show.
Yeah, there's another one.
No, it was his great grandfather, apparently. I like Caitlin again. Like, especially in that episode, Iris has to like cover a lot where she starts out as very proud that she's getting invited back home, and then having to just kind of deal with the crushing disappointment of like, wait a minute, you guys paid for me? Oh, That was so heartbreaking.
I know it was.
I just like sort of the conflict between her and her parents and how that like plays out and resolves itself. Like I thought this was like a good meaty role for a character who I think probably could have become like more of a side character if the show wanted to. And I thought Jeremy was able to like bring out a lot of what made that character interesting there. I liked it a lot.
See, I relate to Iris on a personal level.
Do tell.
Not on the emotional level that Joe's Oscar did for me. So, if nobody knew this fact about me, I'm from the middle of nowhere in Maine.
Ooh.
And Iris is a goddamn country bumpkin. Like, so, what...
Welcome to bumfuck nowhere.
Exactly. So I actually really relate to Iris as a character, because I'm this girl who grew up in the countryside, left for the big city to get a big old job, and then sometimes when I go home, my family's like, "But don't you want to move back in?" No. I don't want to move back home.
I can just imagine you like so politely being like, "Oh, that's sweet. You think I want to move away from the city?" No.
I'd rather not. And I actually have to also agree with Amon in terms of Jeremy's performance of it, because she does have a lot of spunk and energy to her. And compared to some of the other auto memory dolls, this character has to have a lot of spunk and confidence and energy to her, and I love Jeremy's performance a lot. Again, the fact that I can relate to this character very, very strongly shows how good of a performance Jeremy has. As for Christine Marie Cabanos as Erica, I almost said Jeremy again. The names are too close for me. Wow. As for Christine, Erica, unfortunately, what I kind of don't like about Erica's character is her story and development comes very, very early on, as in, like, episode 2. And I'm not a fan of that, because you didn't really get to see much of Erica after that. Like, it's like the character peaked too early, in a sense. And I was disappointed, because I did want to see more of Erica as a character and see Christine shine a bit more. Because, for those of you who probably also don't recall, I'm more used to Christine Marie Cabanos as this slight, not stoic and not monotone little gamer girl named Chiaki from Danganronpa.
I love her, and she's so good in that.
Yes. So, this character of Erica is similar in the quiet department, but not in the stoic, monotone department, if that makes sense. Because Erica does have this quiet determination about her, because her big thing within her story arc in episode 2 is she's questioning herself as to why she became a doll in the first place, and it's kind of being lived through Violet, where she's trying to understand why Violet's decided to become a doll, and it's kind of a self-reflection, but she's using Violet as this mirror, in a sense, to reflect on herself as to why she wants to be a doll in the first place. And this is such a quiet determination. Like, you can feel that Erica really wants to keep going as this doll, despite she's still learning too, because she has her screw ups as well. And I like how Christine portrays that a lot. It's very different than what I'm used to her as of right now. To be fair, of course, I do need to hear more things aside from her being Chiaki and Danganronpa, but that and the little, she was also what's her name in V3, the little magic witch person.
Himiko.
Thank you. She was also Himiko, and it's almost similar to Chiaki, except slightly lazy. Lazy sounding. Not saying Christine was lazy, just the character itself. You get the idea. And I really enjoy the performance a lot from Christine. But the fact that I relate to Iris way too much, good lord. Yeah, both performances are really good, but out of the two, I really enjoyed Jeremy's a lot more.
I'd like to think I also related to Iris a lot more than some of their characters, just from the mentality of trying to be the best at something, and unfortunately sometimes just being mediocre at it. Like in my own career, I'm not the best at what I do, and I'd like to get better, but sometimes you just have to admit that you might not be the best at some things that your skills may lie somewhere else. And I kind of feel like Iris is still learning like what she brings to the table in terms of being an auto memory doll. But let's talk about acting a little bit here, because I really like Jeremy Lee's her tomboyish Iris. I like the fact that she's got this she's like speaking in the back of the throat, almost like it's a heavier dialect than any of the other characters. She's very emphatic on all of the syllables, and she's got the most vibrant personality of all the characters in the cast. And just the way that she speaks also is very different. Like, I think at one point she says the word sorry, but it's almost like the O has become a U, and it's like sorry. And I like that. Like, I like picking up dialect differences between characters, even in it's trying to emulate that country bumpkin attitude, but still bring it into the big city setting. She's trying to be a cosmopolitan girl. But and her entire episode where she has to go back to her hometown really gives Jeremy a big chance to just have fun. Like, I can think of that as like that was a recording day or a week or however long it took to record that was just fun, because she gets to be bratty. She gets to be pretends to say like, yep, I'm the greatest, I'm the most popular writer in town. I've gotten hundreds of clients, and yep, they keep asking for my services, and then just being shut down when Violet absolutely destroys that confidence. And then that was she's a fun character. And I like that she fulfills our short-haired tomboy archetype that we need in every show. She's our Hajime from New Game. We need one of those in every show. Now, as for Christine, Erica is a little more subtle in her thinking, because she's one of the few characters where we hear just as much of her externally as we do internally. There's a whole lot of lines where Christine has to speak Erica's lines that she's saying out loud, but then have a different speaking pattern or a different way of talking when she's just talking to herself. So when she's talking out loud, she's got more of a monotone. It's not it's shy and it's soft-spoken, but it's kind of quiet. But then you hear her inside, and then she's much more expressive, and you hear a lot more of her doubts about Violet's writing styles, or about her the level of confidence that she wished she had, and that all of her thoughts that she can't quite say out loud. And I like that Christine was able to exemplify both halves of that personality. That's kind of a hard thing to do, to have the exact same character speak in two different ways. That'd be like, if you had a character who had a split personality and you had to portray both halves of that personality. It would have been nice if we had more development of her later on in the series, but she's an essential role in episode 2 when Violet is being introduced into the company of the Auto Memories dolls, and she kind of acts as the voice of reason, who has to say, okay, that weirdo over there with the silver hands and the weird brooch is just terrible at her job. She is causing people to be upset because she is writing what they're saying but not what they're feeling, and that is not what we're supposed to do at our jobs. So props on Christine for portraying that essential role in this entire in that episode, because like I said earlier, all of these episodes serve to world build the entire country that we're in, and so their role was to kind of introduce us to what Auto Memories dolls really are, because we don't get any of that in episode 1. It's only in episode 2 where we find out what it is, why it's important, and why Violet would even want to be one.
All right. So, as for my thoughts, first I'll talk about Jeremy as Iris, because I really like to hear Jeremy play very spunky, fun, speak their mind kind of characters, and I really enjoy her doing a lot of that. She's very spunky, interesting, she'll talk shit, and she tries to act like she is the hottest, best at this job, but she's actually really kind of bad at it, and that's something that bugs her a lot. so when she does actually think she's got a real chance with this person, but it's just her family being like, hey, you want to get married? She's genuinely hurt and upset, and like the emotional embarrassment of like running into an old crush of hers that did not reciprocate her feelings, and like the letter she has to make to her family. She's another character that's really great to blend with Violet because she is loud, aggressive, emotional, and very contradicting, and Violet is just very straight-laced and very blunt. And it's a really good combination seeing those two interact in that episode. But I really like her as this spunky Spitfire braggart character, but she's also kind of like sweet and insecure, and Jeremy just does a great job selling her. Now, Erica's really interesting because I really like Christine Cabanos, and I'm usually used to her being much more like high-pitched, hyperactive, or a lot like quieter, more tired-sounding characters. This is like a mix of a quieter, but not really tired, almost like she is much more reserved and almost a little bit like uncomfortable at times. She's a little more colder and stoic than I think I'm used to Christine Cabanos, but it's a role that I wish I heard a little more about her because it's really interesting. I totally bought that voice naturally, and I almost wish there was a little more of Erica to figure out because I think she does peak early and then we never really do much with her again. It's like, I was cool with her. I liked her design, I liked her voice, and she could have been interesting. I want to see more of her, but sadly, we did not. But I do still think Christine Cabanos did a pretty dang good job as Erica too. Now, I think we're ready to move on to our next batch of people at the postal company.
Woo!
We are getting to Benedict and Catalea. Benedict is, I believe he is a delivery man, I want to say.
Yes.
And Catalea is more or less basically the most popular doll at the company. She's refined, she's emotional, everybody comes to her for all the stuff, and she is definitely a very attractive woman, which probably helps her get some new clients too. I actually think
I wasn't gonna say that, but I'm glad you said that.
I think
come
she says herself, I think, at the end of the show that she used to be a dancer.
I think she used to be a dancer, so I think they were implying that means she herself was already a very social person and probably met a lot of people that way. Yeah. And like I said, she is somebody who I feel when people assume of what a doll is, they would think somebody like her, and that works at the very least for her getting new jobs. Playing Benedict Blue is Ben Pronsky, and playing Catalea Baudelaire, that's how you say her name, is Reba Burr. Ben Pronsky has played such characters as Saber of Black Siegfried in Fate Apocrypha, Mu Alexis from Magi Kingdom of Magic, Takashi Kamiyama from Cromartie High School, Tsukasa from Your Name, and Hanage from Super Milk-chan. That was an interesting one. Reba...
You have to really?
Yes, I did. Okay,
why not?
I know nothing about Super Milk-chan. I figured that'd be more interesting for you guys than me, and you proved me right. Reba Burr has played such characters as Ginshu from Children of the Whales, Jennifer Record from ID Zero, Fuku from Blame, Piprika from Magi Adventure of Sinbad, and Liu Shen Mei from Kurumuku. Now, Amon, what'd you think?
I enjoyed these two. Benedict's fun. He's kind of a brash idiot, and I think Ben plays that very well. He nails a lot of the characters' liveliness very well, but also why he kind of keeps getting into conflicts with his boss because he keeps doing dumb things like spraining his ankle from wearing those dumb boots all the time.
I didn't understand. I kept forgetting that his boots were like heels. I'm like, why is he wearing those?
Okay, I did not notice that until the last episode where he does that really dramatic jump off the train, and I'm like, is he wearing heels?
He's wearing heels the whole time.
He's wearing heels the whole
He was wearing the
time.
heels the whole show.
Yep.
What was that about? That was
interesting. My understanding is that did used to be a thing in men's fashion. It's not not anymore. It hasn't been for like a while, but you know,
that was the whole thing with butchers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You find illustrations of like, you know, late Victorian dandies. They wear stuff like that all the time. Like it's very.
And how pink was like very much a masculine color.
Exactly,
so
like it makes sense in this sort of weird like steampunk post World War One sort of setting, but like yeah, it does. I just like the fact that like he still like he wears these things all the time and he still sprains his fucking ankle.
It's hilarious.
I find that absolutely hysterical. No, Ben's a lot of fun playing this character. He especially like, you know, like especially like early on, I think he adds a lot of color, especially when he's like you know, trying to show Violet the ropes, and you know, is like, hey, you're pretty good at this, weird lady. Yeah, I trust you to. I'm gonna go off my motorcycle now. I trust you to finish the job. What else? Yeah, he's just a fun character, and I like the way he bounces off a lot of the other actors in this show. He's very entertaining to watch. And I love the same thing with Reba playing Catalea.
Yes.
How did you say
Catalea.
Playing Catalea, who I think falls very much in the same category. Like, you know, she's also very you know, dignified and refined, but I also like that she takes her job very seriously. And also clearly has a lot of issues with how Claudia is running things occasionally. And I thought Reba I thought she brought that out very well as somebody who like has a lot of class about her, but she's not just sort of this, you know, passive pretty lady. She's like, you know, Claudia, this might be a really stupid idea you've come up with. You might want to consider doing anything not this boneheaded. Have you tried that?
It's like, have you tried this?
Have you tried not being a complete moron? Which I liked a lot. I thought she brought out that edge of the character very well, of somebody who, like, you know, she's popular, but she's also like smart and competent. Yeah, no, I enjoy these characters. I feel like they didn't show up enough, which I know isn't really true. I would have enjoyed seeing them a little more often. They're kind of
the bookend characters, in the fact that we see them at the beginning of most of the episodes before we go off on our like adventure of the day.
Yeah,
exactly. So there was fun with her on screen. I almost wish like they had also gotten their own like focus episodes, like I know some of the other side characters did. Those would have been interesting, I think. Yeah, I enjoyed both these performances a lot.
Okay. Both of these actors I don't know much about. I think the last time I heard Ben Pronsky was actually in Your Name, if I remember right. Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder...
He was, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder when it comes to dubs that involve LA voice actors, my repertoire and knowledge of LA voice actors is very, very tiny. Compared to someone like, I don't know, Jet. Like, he's better at that side than me. But... And then Reba, I've never heard of this woman in my life. So Ben Pronsky is a very interesting choice here as Benedict, because, and I feel like this is going to be I feel like this is the conversation that'll happen. So, Benedict's character design is very interesting, and the voice that Ben gives for him is very interesting. Because, it's not...
What do you mean by interesting?
So the character design of Benedict looks younger than what Ben makes it sound like, basically. But I can appreciate that decision, because from what I can gather, Ben is not a little boy. Ben is a man, and it is mentioned that he actually has known Claudia for some time. I believe they're supposed to be partners. Supposed to be. Either that or that's a whole teasing thing that happens early on. But because it seems to me in my head that Benedict is supposed to be a man, not a boy, I actually appreciate that Ben went with a more, not necessarily gruff, but a more bass baritone kind of tone to Benedict's character rather than going with something more of a tenor sound, which Claudia actually has more of that sound, him and Gilbert, compared to Ben as Benedict. And I can really appreciate that because it adds a bit more of diversity and more of a different sounding voice and dynamic to this show. So I appreciate that a lot. The only downside is I wish Benedict showed up a little bit more than he did. As for Reba, I really do enjoy Reba as Catalea, actually. She has a mix of maturity, some sass, and she kind of has a little bit of a sex appeal to her, too.
No.
Yeah.
And not just because you see massive cleavage, boys and girls. I think a joke was made at Claudia's expense about the two of them sleeping together at one point. And it made me giggle. But as someone who I've never heard of before until I watched this show, I really enjoy Reba's performance. And it was a lot of fun with this maturity and sassiness to her. But you can also tell that Catalea really takes her job seriously. And she does what she can to make sure the feelings that her clients have are displayed properly. And I really appreciate that performance, and it makes me want to hear Reba in more things. I hope we fix that. So at the end of the day, I like both these performances. I like the direction that they went with them. I just wished they mostly Benedict, because I think Catalea shows up a bit more than Benedict did, in all honesty. But I want to hear them more things. So.
I like what you said, Lilac, about the fact that Ben looks younger than he actually sounds. Yeah. This is probably the one where I chalk that up to KyoAni's limitations in character designs, because KyoAni has 3 modes. You have child, you have hot teenager, and you have grandma. Those are the 3 modes that you've got in KyoAni's show. So we can't really have I'm a 30-year-old man. No, you've got I'm 30, but I look like I'm 15. But I don't buy Ben's performance on this fits with the personality just fine, even if it doesn't quite look like what the character design is. That's just a flaw of the design. Ben gives him Benedict this like kind of a growl, at least compared to Claudia. Like, I'm comparing him more directly to Claudia because the two of them are in the same workspace with each other, and also Ben seems to have this vernacular pattern to speaking, even though he has formal language, which is very interesting. Like, he works in a profession where you have to speak professionally to people and you have to get stuff done, but he still speaks like he's like a dock worker or a blue-collar worker, which is really interesting. Again, it kind of fleshes out the variety of tasks in the city following the war. We don't have like a year to really compare this to, but it really does feel like this is a show or a light novel that was written by a Victorian England fanboy, as opposed to like someone who had like accurately studied it, which is fine. It's fine, you know. Just cut out all the boring things about like class and social structure, and just focus on the cool things like steampunk automobiles and flying trains and all that fun stuff. So now as for Reba's performance, I get the feeling, just from listening to Reba's performance, that she's using her happiness to mask something much deeper, much more somber. She seems to have a lot more layers to her than she lets on, and it's like she's putting on an act for her clients and for her co-workers by having this professional attitude that gets the job done and makes everyone else want to do better in their own job, but she seems like she's masking something in her. There may be more information in the background of the light novels, I don't know, but whatever it is, it gives off the sense that she's much deeper than just a pretty face who's really good at writing letters. Although, to the credit of writing those letters, she really does kind of exemplify why an auto memory doll is so important in this time period. Like, to us in the modern era who do all of our own writing to individuals, we may think, oh, why don't you just write your own letter to someone? Or why don't these people in the show just pick up a goddamn typewriter and type it out themselves? You can't do that. This is a show that understands that just because you think something doesn't mean you can convey that into words. Once you take a thought and make it physical by putting it into words, you lose some of the impact if you're not tuned into it. You don't even have to use flowery language or heavy prose. You don't have to confuse vocabulary with depth. And that's what I think Reba gets about Cataleya's about her personality. There's importance in the value of words that you need someone who's good at that to do. And if you're not good at that, then you need to find another job. So, and as far as these both were good performances to good characters that I think filled their niche in the show just right. Not oversaturated, but important supporting lead characters.
I think Cataleya is very fun and interesting. I think she's, like, the way Reba portrays her, she's got this sultriness, yet this confidence, this stride in her step, and this level of energy and intrigue, like, when she's dealing with customers, but this sense of sincerity and emotion when it comes to Violet and the other girls and their situations, and I find that really interesting. Ben Bronsky is interesting to me as Benedict, mainly because I think I mentioned earlier in the night that I felt like there was a character or there was a role where it seemed like the face and the voice were at odds with each other. This was the one that did it for me. Just because something about Benedict, he looks like a much younger paper delivery boy. Or like somebody who's a little younger. Like, he might be about the same age as Claudia, but he looks like a baby face, or he looks like a younger character to me. And something about his gruffer, tougher, like a little more like older sounding voice felt very distracting to me. I think he does a good job with what the character does, and I think he's good at sounding like a little immature, but he himself does sound gruff and sincere and nice. But it just seemed like it was a little too gruff, or gruffer than I was expecting with the particular aesthetic of this character, and that was just distracting.
God damn you, KyoAni! Now here's a challenge for you. Okay, so Amon, I know that you didn't see any of the key adaptation shows that Kyoto Animation made back in the day. Lilac and Andrew, did you guys see any of those, like Air, Clan?
I've seen Clannad. I love Clannad.
I have not actually. They Air at least has been on my list for forever, and I actually haven't seen any of them. My experience with KyoAni is like Haruhi, Beyond the Boundary, Free, a good amount of the more recent stuff, but I'm not. I haven't really ever seen like the key trinity known as Air, Canon, and Clan.
Yeah. Well, okay, fine, but at the very least, you've seen the character designs from those shows?
Absolutely.
Before?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to imagine, like, yes, the character design for Benedict is a little off. Let's take the character design from like early Kyoto Animation stuff and put that in this show, and there's a contrast for you.
For sure,
Oh,
for sure.
boy.
Alright, so, do you think we should move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Alright.
I think we should march into the next
Damn
segment.
it, Noah!
I also think we should march into the next segment with a pair...
I will be your shitlord for the
Don't
day.
A pair of brothers. This is, Dietrich and Gilbert. Both of the Bougainville family. I got the pronunciation for that. And
That doesn't sound made up at all.
Dietrich is a older, rougher guy who I think has a very rough time with Violet, and Gilbert is a central, important, moving figure in Violet Evergarden's life. It's something like he is somebody that helped her a lot when everybody else had given up on her, and he unfortunately is killed in the line of battle. Playing the two characters, Keith Silverstein plays Dietrich, I think it is. Dietrich, thank you. And Tony Azzolino plays Gilbert. Keith Silverstein, you've heard play such characters as Koichi Tanaka from Ajin, Cocoon from Devilman Crybaby, Caster of Red Shakespeare from Fate Apocrypha, Gray Man from ID Zero, and Imusa from Kuromukuro. Tony Azzolino has played such characters as Maso from Children of the Whales, Cyborg 007 from Cyborg 009 vs. Devilman, Sanpei Taira from Gantz O, Romanov from ID Zero, and Male Villager A from Blame. I figured that'd be fun just to keep with the
Just
theme.
throw that in there. Why not?
I'm so glad that you keep mentioning Cyborg 009 because it reminds me that we're finally getting a DVD release of the 2000 series. You know, once they finally
Once Justin finishes fixing every problem wrong with that thing.
Whoops.
One day.
Would you like?
If you're listening to this, Justin, thank you so much. We appreciate. We will buy 10 copies of that just to make up for the hard work.
Lord.
Andrew, would you like me to start?
I would like you to start.
So I enjoyed both of these performances quite a bit. I'm gonna start with Dietfried because that's not a name. I've been sitting here for like 2 minutes trying to figure out what German name they were aiming for and messed up, and I'm stumped.
That's why we were like, wait, why is no one talking? Oh, Amon's figuring this shit out.
Feels like it's like there was a character that exists in the European language that's not in Japanese. They had to change it. I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
not.
Anyways,
Probably not.
It's not Saga of Tanya the Evil levels bad, but it's getting there.
This is
Anyways.
as close as we're gonna get.
However, while his name is silly, Keith Silverstein's performance is not. I liked him a lot in this role.
You liked him?
I like the performance. Dietfried's an asshole.
Okay, they're good.
Like, I mean, for great, one of the things we find out about him is like, hey, bro, I found a child. You want her?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awful.
He's not a
Dietfried's a piece of shit.
He is an interesting character, and it's a good performance. I don't like him personally. He's kind of terrible.
Okay.
He's a piece of shit.
This is true for other characters Keith Silverstein has also played, so that's appropriate. No, I thought it was a very good performance. I thought, like, particularly in that scene, I think he nails the essential, like, sliminess of that whole thing, of just how, like, gross this is, and how he doesn't really seem to acknowledge how weird it is that he's, like, he has this child, and he's just like, hey, you want her? I got you a gift.
She's not a human, she's a weapon.
He's a weapon. And I think a lot of the strength of his performance comes from that ongoing conflict with Violet, where like he cannot get himself out of this mindset of like, you are a weapon. You're a weapon that got my brother killed, for that matter. And just his refusal to view her in any other context, no matter what she does, more or less up until like the very end, where he finally starts to like come around a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't really care for that personally. The idea that he acts like such an asshole throughout the show, and then suddenly he's supposed to be a nice person.
Nice in quotation marks.
Yeah, even in quotation marks, nice guy. You don't earn that title, man.
No. And this is one of those things I'm curious about, because I know that compared to the novel, the anime does not play things in the same chronological order. I'm wondering if we're partially looking at like they wanted to tie up that bow, but in the original story that plays out over a much longer period of time. But that's speculation.
It wouldn't surprise.
Yes.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me because KyoAni seems to like to do that. Like they like to put a nice little bow on the conclusions of everything, even if it wasn't in the source material.
Yeah. But no, I still like this performance a lot. I thought he did a wonderful job of like sort of highlighting Dietfried's kind of like nasty era stock, sort of aristocratic nobleness, but also just like how bitter he is now, because it's like, well, my brother's dead and he got killed protecting this lady that I gave him, so I'm not happy about that. And I thought Keith just did a wonderful job of bringing all that stuff out. Like I didn't like him being on screen, but I thought Keith did a good job of presenting the character the way he needed to be. In contrast, I like Gilbert a lot more because he's not a raging asshole for the entire 13 episodes.
That does help.
That
does help for sure.
It's like, you're an empathetic person. Oh, you're a nice man.
We like empathetic.
We like you, and sadly you had to get exploded.
Whoops.
Sorry. Like, what episode does that one happen in? Is that like where we see that in full? Is that like what, episode 11?
Episode, I want to say it's...
I actually want to say it's 9.
Right.
Yeah,
9 sounds right.
Well,
That's a rough scene.
There's an entire flashback episode.
Yeah, because
that's the one I'm...
Because 11 is where we see Soldier Johnny Young Bosch kick.
That's
the
right. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it is 9 then. Anyways, now that I've derailed the episode again.
Again.
Like the train.
Again.
Like the train.
Like the
Just
train.
like the train in episode 13.
Stop it.
Hey, continuity.
Stop it.
No, I like Tony a lot. I thought that, like, especially in contrast to how Keith plays Dietfried, I thought you bought why he ended up meaning so much to Violet, even outside just kind of like the basic thing of like he's basically the only person who's been nice to her in her entire life. You understood. I thought you did just a wonderful job of showing like why he's doing this and why he became so important to Violet, and just having this feeling like a real person and not kind of like sort of a saintly figure who's now dead that Violet thinks fondly back of. Like he feels like an actual human. Had his own flaws and so on, but clearly like cared about this person and wanted them to do better than they've been able to do. And then you just get that whole bit at the end where like Violet's trying to drag him off after her arms have fallen off, and it's like, go live, I love you, go.
And then your heart just
What does that
melts.
mean?
Your heart just
I know,
melts.
it's sad. It's a rough show.
It is.
In more ways than one. Jesus.
Oh yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, that was a hard segment to watch. But yeah, no, I liked both of these performances a lot for very different reasons. Yeah.
Let's see. How am I gonna start this off? Keith Silverstein's an asshole. Not Keith as a human.
That's about right.
Not
Hey,
Keith
hey,
as a
hey,
human
hey,
being. He's a sweet human being in real life, but
Hashtag not all key silver.
no, it's Dietfried. He's the asshole in this scenario. And it's very interesting because I actually don't associate Keith Silverstein playing asshole characters. I really don't. And you can't count Johan, because Johan's not technically an asshole.
That's true.
He's technically not an
You
asshole.
talking about from Monster?
He's evil, but he's a very like polite, refined
Yes,
evil.
that's the exact reason why he's not an
The
asshole.
worst kind.
But it's very interesting to see, because it's one of those things where I don't often see him as this piece of shit character. Because Dietfried is a piece of shit. like I don't even want to know where he found Violet. I don't know what he did with Violet before giving her to Gilbert. Like, I can imagine so many things happening, and unfortunately none of them good. But, how...
Luckily, this is not a graphic kind
Thank
of show.
God.
It's like TV-14. It's not MA-edge.
No, actually, it is a graphic show. In the sense that there's a lot of blood.
Yeah, but it's also not Saw levels of gore. See, if it got to that point, I would have quit a long time ago. Anyway, but I do enjoy how Keith portrayed this character as both a militant person, but also someone who, aside from showing us he's a piece of shit, specifically with the flashbacks in the story, you can see his anger and resentment really shine through, and how he takes it out on Violet. Because, like, seeing her actually trying to move on and be happy, despite his brother being killed in the process, and still treating her as this tool. Like, you were only a tool, like, and you killed a bunch of people. Like, why? You shouldn't be doing this. You're a piece of garbage. Why? And how he acts towards Violet was... I enjoyed it a lot, and it wasn't extremely powerful, and I only say that because of, again, I had personal like feelings and connections with other stories and characters, but it still had an impact on the story, and it helped progress not only himself and the acceptance of his brother's death and how Violet's trying to move on, but it also progresses Violet's character herself as well, as this last piece that's still kind of tying her to who she was before. You know what I mean? And speaking as that last piece, Gilbert. So same thing with Reba. I've never heard of Tony before. This is a new name and voice for me, and I actually really like it. He has this strong military precision, but it's also or presence, I should say, a strong military presence, because this family, from my understanding, comes off as like a rich, high in society kind of family, which Keith has to show with Dietrich as well. But on Gilbert's end, Tony has to have a moral compass to him, and he has his own set of ethics and morals that he follows, and which obviously you see when he interacts with Violet and takes her in. And I think he has such compassion towards Violet in raising her to be a human being and just to be a girl, not just as this tool that can be cast aside but when she's no longer useful. And episodes 8 and 9, when it's the story of how she was raised by Gilbert, is definitely the strongest of his performance, because before that we really only had flashbacks, but then we get the full story here, and I really think that's the height of his performance, because that's where we get the true story, or at least most of it, because we still get a little bit of the story left at the end, with their interaction just before the final battle, where Gilbert ends up missing in action. But same thing with Reba. I really want to see Tony in a lot more things. He has a nice, for me, he has a nice tenor sounding voice. It makes Gilbert as a character rather mature and innocent in his own way, compared to Keith's more like mature, not prideful, noble sounding character. That's probably the correct way to put it. So it's an interesting dynamic and balance between the two of them. So yeah, I like both of these performances a lot, and I cannot wait to hear Tony in more things. And of course, it's always a pleasure to hear Keith Silverstein in things. So,
all right, thank you, Noah. I'm sure you have thoughts.
Only in the sense that these two characters seem like they are the opposite of each other. Like they both went into the military, and they came out of it as completely different kinds of people. Keith, it sounds like he's having a lot of fun, and I'm glad for that, because he's got a bit of a rasp to his voice, a little bit of it that kind of helps accent his nastiness. Which is it's a nice little quirk to have. You know, you can have someone who talks smooth and elegant, but you know that they're a bastard. And then you can just have a guy who just sounds like he's a bastard, which is totally what Dietfried is. But I do like the fact that he can, like, Keith understands the range a little bit. Like there's moments to be shouting and over the top when Dietfried is yelling at Violet about her. How she's not a human, and that he blames her for a whole lot of things. And he seems to be projecting a whole lot onto her. Like, all the problems that he has with life, he's like focusing them all in on this one individual. You know, he can't be mad at anyone else. He can't take out his frustration about the loss of his brother or what he's gone through in the war. So he's just gonna chill in on this one person. So yeah, like, Keith's having a lot of fun, it sounds like, in all this. And I don't like him anymore. I don't like Dietfried anymore later on when we find out his tragic backstory. Like, no, it doesn't justify him at all. But to give Keith credit, he doesn't go so over the top that it sounds like a cartoonish, evil Saturday morning cartoon villain. But it's the kind that you feel like he's been shaped by the war, which, again, heavily contrasts Gilbert pretty heavily, and this is as in-depth as we get to what the effects of the whole war did to everyone. Because we see a lot of fighting in the show, we see a lot of blood and death, and people mourning for the loss of their loved ones, but he's probably the best indication we have about what it actually does to people who aren't coping with it very well, because he's still kind of in the mode of I'm still in the military and probably have a really hard time adjusting to civilian life again. So yeah, I don't really know Keith all that well, actually. Like, I haven't seen any of the shows you listed that he's been in before, but he definitely brings a lot of energy in, and I can see why people are excited when he's in a role, because he's definitely fun to listen to. Now, Andrew, you said earlier that there was one character that you thought was had the most contrast between the character design and the voice, and that was with Benedict.
Yes.
For me, Tony's Gilbert is the most contrasting between the voice and the character design, because I don't think that Tony was the best pick for this character.
Really? Interesting.
Now, this is not because of the not because of acting abilities. This is totally because of his voice. Okay, Gilbert is a seasoned war veteran who is... We don't quite get an idea about how old he is, but we can assume he's somewhere between 25 and 35. Or, like, he's not old yet. And yet... But he's old enough that he should have an adult-sounding voice. And Tony gives him this young, clear, and kind of more normal-sounding voice that doesn't quite give off the sense that he's been in the military at all. He sounds just a little too normal to what I expected out of that kind of a character. I'm not saying that they should have gone like full Jameson Price or Patrick Seitz low voice kind of character, but I did want someone who it just sounded like they had more of an age to their voice. But to give credit to Tony, his acting is really good when he gets to kind of act as a mentor to Violet. Not just in episode 1, but also the multiple flashback episodes, and especially when he's telling her to leave him because he's badly injured and she should get away and save herself. That sensation of how morbid his outlook is on his chances of getting out alive is pretty spot on, and that was the episode that KyoAni definitely got to show off their panache for war, because they seem to be known for romance and high school antics all the time. And here it's like, nah, let's just throw all that out the window. We're going back to our Full Metal Panic days. We're going full war on here. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen any of Full Metal Panic, you should go do that.
I need to fix that.
I've heard good things for sure.
I mean, Gonzo did the first series, but KyoAni specifically did. They did Fumofu, which is the happy
comedy
war
spin-off.
Yeah, and then they also
comedy,
did Second Raid,
but,
I think, right?
But they did Second Raid, and that's much more in the wartime setting. It didn't get quite as graphic as Violet Evergarden, but you can tell there was a real panache for capturing the sensation of being in a military scrimmage.
If you don't mind, I kind of want to interject on something. You described Tony's voice for Gilbert as normal, right? And I kind of have to disagree that it's too normal, because I feel like that's what the character needs. Because Violet needs some sort of normalcy instead of being this child soldier. Because remember, Gilbert is this moral compass, and he wants her to live as herself, not just for the sake of like taking orders and stuff. So
True.
I feel like how Tony portrays it, even though it sounds normal, as you say, I feel like that's the kind of tone it needs, to be honest, like trying to get Violet to live for herself.
I would agree with that if it wasn't for the fact that there's one other character who we're about to talk about who kind of fills that vocal niche already. So I feel like Gilbert's inclusion in there is kind of maybe not as dynamic as it should be, in contrast to aforementioned other characters.
Okay. All right. So
it's a bit of a point of contention.
No, I get
sure.
it.
I could definitely see what you're saying about Tony's voice, but I definitely think it is gruff enough and interesting that I think it does fill out the character, and when he does get the more emotional moments and the dying moment, he really does sell himself a lot to me about how good he is with doing the Gilbert part, even though if it did take me a little bit to adapt and adjust for sure. Keith Silverstein as Deepfree for sure. Keith Silverstein is a very interesting, charismatic character in general, but this is like a much more like angry villain who it's very much pretty much revealed just what his deal is that he hates, almost feels like he died for him or he died protecting her, and he feels like anger towards her is anger towards failing to save his brother. Mm-hmm. And it's a really interesting moment for sure, and one that I think really reflects on like who he is and what his deal is for sure. And
he and his ponytail need therapy.
Oh boy, do they.
So much therapy.
That being said, Gilbert I can definitely see about the contrast with voice and appearance, though like I said, it didn't bother me as much, though it did take me a little bit to get used to. It sounded a little odd or off at times. That said, I really do think like the actual moments that Gilbert needed to show off what he was made of, Tony was able to do it justice for sure. And with that, I think it's time to move on to our final section of characters. One is an important figure that helps take in our main character herself, and the other is our title character herself, Miss Violet Evergarden, as well as Claudia Hodgins. Playing the part of Claudia Hodgins is Kyle McCarthy.
I'm sorry, I have to call bullshit right there.
What?
We'll get more into that later.
Yes.
But yes, Kyle McCarthy.
Really, that's the part you want to call bullshit.
There's a reason for it, and I'll explain.
And Violet Evergarden is played by Erica Harlacher.
You got it! Yay!
Yeah, I know. I've corrected that mistake.
It took 130 episodes, but we finally learned how to pronounce your last name right.
You stop it. Okay. Kyle McCarthy has played such characters as Ikuya Ogura from Ajin, Cyborg 009 in Cyborg 009 Call of Justice, Kane Arisugawa from ID0, Shinji Mato from Fate Extra Last Encore, and Ryo How the Hell Have You Been Asakura from Devilman Crybaby.
I still have to watch that.
Erica Harlacher has played such characters as Kurapika from Hunter x Hunter 2011, Claudia Enfield from Asterisk War, Elizabeth Lioness from The Seven Deadly Sins, Ruler aka Jeanne d'Arc from Fate Apocrypha, and Yumiko Jabami from Kakegurui. The whole big interesting list for both of these characters. Amon, what do you think?
I like these two performances for very different reasons. Starting with Kyle as Claudia. That is not a man's name.
That is not a man's name.
I have a tendency when I watch these, if they're not like the lead character, I have a tendency to not really remember whose people's names are. I tend to just sort of remember like character designs. So when you posted the cast list, I'm like, who the fuck's Claudia? Wait, his name's Claudia?
Surprise!
Right. So that was fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting name for sure. I totally
Indeed.
get it.
But I like Kyle playing this role. I thought I found Claudia interesting in the sense that he's taken on this responsibility of he wants to do a solid by a little buddy of his and help out Violet, which he continues to do even though he seems a little exasperated by the whole experience, possibly just because he's tired. He always looks so exhausted. See, this is how you make the KyoAni hot teenager characters look older. Just give them bags under their eyes, and they look like they don't sleep ever. Yeah, I liked Kyle's performance as far as he has a lot of that same thing Gilbert has, where he clearly like he has empathy and sympathy for Violet. He wants to help her out, but he's not quite the same level of like there's still a level of like, what is with you? You are so weird. I do not know what to do in this scenario.
Yeah.
I'm a little lost. But I like he brought out that sense of like he's kind of frustrated by Violet and having to like contend with Violet's eccentricities, but also like you totally buy that like, oh, there's a reason he's continuing to do this, why he doesn't just throw her out. Like he has that basic sympathy underlying his performance that I think is important to his character, just for that reason of like, why don't you get rid of her if she's such a pain? And I appreciated that. I feel like that's an aspect like I do think that's a very important aspect of the character. Otherwise it's just like, well, he could just be a mean boss, but he's not. It was a nice performance in a very unflashy way, I guess. Like it wasn't like super hammy or anything like that. It was just really well done.
Yeah, and I was saying, I feel like that's what was good about him, and that's why I didn't want such an undynamic character to play voice for Gilbert.
I can see that.
So I feel like Claudia filled that out. He's like, perfect. That's it. That's our guy right there.
He's a reasonable dude to help lead us through this story. So I like.
He's a good boss.
He's a good boss. He's trying. So yeah, I liked his performance quite a bit, and I also liked Erica as Violet, just because I thought Erica had a really hard job. She has to play a character who is like, it was explicitly written as being like, really, she's very flat affect. She is very emotionally stunted because she has basically not been treated as a person for most of her life. And kind of has to do that thing where she has to struggle with what are kind of in essence like basic human emotions as somebody who does not really, she doesn't understand what those are, and essentially like play as someone who is emotional, but also is like will experience emotions that she does not even know how to contextualize or like express correctly. While also playing this character who like a lot of time is like very flat, very monotone, but not boring. Like there is depth to Violet even when she does not have a lot of like strong personality in her performance. And I thought Erica did that very well. Like I can definitely see someone not really caring for Violet as a character for a lot of those reasons, but I think Erica did a wonderful job bringing out what the character needed to work in the context of the story. I think those are very challenging roles in a lot of times, especially when you're voice acting. You don't have the advantage of like physical movement to work off of, and I thought she did a wonderful job. Like I was never bored watching Violet do stuff, and I thought Erica just kept that attention so well, kept my attention so well of just having just enough there to make you want to keep, to help you keep watching, even though she's still keeping, everything very reserved and close to the chest. I enjoyed it a lot as a consequence. I think she gave a very strong performance, which I think helped the show overall a lot because, if Violet doesn't work, I think the show kind of falls apart. So kudos to you, Erica.
When watching the show,
mm-hmm.
Did you also get the sense that she might also be a robot throughout the show?
I mean, look. As a lover of stories about sad robots, I know she's technically a sad cyborg, but she's very much a sad robot. This is very much a sad robot show. This is very much that like Pluto thing of like what exactly do, a thing that looks like a person but technically isn't. Which obviously isn't quite what this is going for, but no, there is very much that vibe of like she does feel very robotic, and yeah. I think having her, giving her the mechanical arms, I do think has a certain thematic importance to that.
Can we
as well.
talk about the mechanical arms for just a second? Like,
sure.
Oh my God, the animation on those.
It's really good.
It looks so good.
It's unfair.
So good.
Okay,
It's ridiculous.
If you're going to focus on anything, like the sun shining off of the metal of these metal are they're not like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. They're like there's individual joints. It's like they're broken up. Like it's like an exoskeleton.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that
in the 1800s.
It sounds like that's what they were going for, like an exoskeleton of some sort.
It's just
it's like, and I'm like, holy shit.
It's just
The Alphon brothers have got nothing on this girl.
The Alphon
Oh, man,
brothers?
the-
You mean the Elric brothers?
The
Whoever
Alphonse
that is.
brothers.
Alphonse brothers. Wait a
Alphonse
sec.
and Alphonse, my favorite.
It's been a while
character.
since I've seen FMA. I'm sorry.
you start watching the show and it looks really, really nice. And then she takes her gloves off, or her coat off, whatever, and it's like, oh my god, they put so much money in this show. This is beautiful.
So much money. It is.
It's like
I can't really tell. Like,
really
do you guys think that
gorgeous.
is it CGI? Because from the texture off of it, I feel like it's texture map, but I also feel like it's partially animated.
I feel
Whatever it is, it's really, 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 really good.
yeah.
hand drawn.
No.
Damn it. Damn it, Noah.
Unintentional pun. The podcast.
No,
All
not
right.
the podcast. That's your own goddamn show. Get out.
So Steph,
Yes.
what do you think of the two?
So first of all, this is both relating to Kyle McCarley. First of all, because I'm looking at ANN right now, apparently he's listed to voice John Steinbeck in Bungo Stray Dogs 2, so I'm very excited for that. But here's the thing. I call bullshit that this is Kyle McCarley. This is the reason why. So the two roles that I know this human being for are Shigeo Mob Kageyama Mob Psycho and Ryota Watari in Your Lie in April.
Wait, back the
Two
fuck
very-
up. This guy plays Mob?
Yes!
Yeah.
Wow.
This is fucking Mob! And then, because Noah will appreciate the Your Lie in April reference is for Watari.
Yeah.
So here, that's why I'm calling bullshit. This is the most mature sounding character I've heard Kyle McCarley voice.
Same.
Like-
It's really, really dynamic and
It
interesting
is
for sure.
so different. Because I didn't think that he was capable of it based on the other roles that I've seen him as before. But he plays it so well. Claudia is a very mature sounding character. More so than I've ever heard Kyle perform before, and I very much appreciate that. He has this way about him where he's kind of filling in the shoes, like filling in and stepping in where Gilbert left off for Violet, as a supportive role. To which, when you say that we don't need another one after hearing Claudia, if you think of it that way, the tone makes sense in my brain. But yeah, it's very mature. It's the most adult I've ever heard Kyle play, and I can very much appreciate it. It's like if we took the concept of Monica Rial and her big girl voice, and then all of a sudden we call Kyle McCarley and his big boy voice, in a sense. And it's a lot of fun, and I honestly really want to hear him use that voice more often, because a lot of us are probably very used to him portraying like a teenager instead of a full-grown man, a full-grown adult. And I very much appreciate this, and I appreciate Claudia as a character with that maturity, and yet he has his regrets too, because there's a very specific line that he says to Violet very early on, where he says that she's on fire, or something to that extent, or
She has burns.
Yes.
And you don't know it yet, but those burns
Yes.
are going to stick with you.
Yes. And it's a very strong statement, because not only does it come back for Violet in the last few episodes of the show, it comes back for Claudia as well. Because Claudia was also a soldier in the army, and he left once the war was done because he wanted to start this business and he wanted to get out of there. But that doesn't mean he doesn't carry his own scars from the war. So I can appreciate what Kyle did with the performance there, in not only being that mature guiding hand to Violet, but also showing that he is also affected by what went on with the war. Like, the good, the bad, everything. So I appreciate that a lot. As for Erica, as our titular character, Violet. So Erica's Violet is very interesting because I feel like it's one of the situations where one wrong move and Violet would have sounded completely robotic to me. But the best way to describe Erica's performance of Violet is exactly as Anne refers to her as when they first meet, as a doll. Violet as a character has very doll-like qualities, and she doesn't really show a lot of emotion because of how she was kind of raised. I only say kind of because I feel like that's more of a thing that happens to her way before Gilbert takes her in. That she's ingrained to have no emotion and to just be this tool of war, in a sense. And a lot of that's ingrained in her, but over time she starts to evolve as a character and learning what these emotions are, learning what these certain words mean. For beautiful is a big example there, when she and Gilbert find the green brooch for the first time, and the word that the merchant describes it as is beautiful, and Violet's like, what is beautiful? Is that the same thing as pretty? Like, you can tell she has a very curious mindset. She wants to learn about these things and understand them because she's never known these kinds of words or these meanings before, or these emotions. So Erica certainly starts off with these doll-like qualities, but as the show progresses, you start to hear and feel more warmth in her voice, even if it's more subtle of a warmth, if anything, because she still retains those doll-like qualities by the series end, but she has a lot more warmth and comfort to her because of the experiences that she's going through. And I think Erica does a phenomenal job portraying all of those aspects and growing Violet as a character with that through line and that emotional turmoil that she has to deal with her grief and acceptance of what happened and how she now has to live for herself. So I really enjoyed Erica a lot as Violet. Both these performances were really nice, but Erica's, if anything, Erica's, bar none, best performance of the show to me.
So Noah, let's hear your thoughts. I know you're going to have opinions here.
Well, I got I got 5 pages here of thoughts here, so I'll try to narrow it down.
Please do.
Please.
My thesis statement has to be turned into the professor, and I had to, put all those thoughts into words, just like Violet does.
That was a terrible segue.
It was.
That was a terrible segue.
I'm not even going to use that because I'm actually not going to talk about Violet first. I'm going to talk about Claudia first. Because his, they call him Hodgins throughout the show, so I agree with Amon that I didn't realize his name was Claudia until I looked at the cast list. But Kyle is cool. Kyle is a cool guy who's got, in all the roles I've heard him before, he has, that cool best friend voice to him. So this was a nice change of pace, because he's gruff, like, he's got a gruff voice, but he's considerate. And he puts, he seems to change the way he speaks depending on who he's talking to. Like, he's almost like he slurs his words a little bit more when he's around Violet. Like, he's speaking in a more vernacular way. Then we see him when he's talking to customers or he's talking to other employees, and he puts on the not the facade, but the impression of a guy in charge who's is not the kind of businessman who's going to make everyone work late hours and whatever the name of that pig guy was from Agretzko. He's not that kind of boss. He's he's not Ton. He's he's a good guy, and I like what he brings to this world, especially with Violet's introduction into his workplace, because it's a complete contrast to what she got from Dietfried before. So, but I don't really have as much to say, really, in terms of what he does throughout the show, because, like we kind of said with some of the other supporting characters from his company, they're around a lot, but they don't have as much development. He's just a very necessary, normal person versus all the other weird characters. We've got astronomers, and we've got playwrights, and we've got weird robot ladies with metal fingers, and Kyle's the normal guy in this whole world. So that's that. Now, as for Violet, there's this joke around. It's like a screen cap from the show Arthur. Yes, the PBS show, where one character shouts at Arthur, "Be quiet, Arthur. You're not the main character. You're just the name of the show." I kind of felt that way about Violet for a good chunk of the show, where it's like, you're not the main character. You're just the name of the show, Violet. Because all the most interesting parts of the show for me were all about the other characters, were about the one-shot characters we meet, or the other ones that make up the roster. So I don't think I was really fair on Violet for a good chunk of it, because I've seen this kind of character before. It reminded me the most of the character of Chi from Chobits, this robotic character who is learning emotions throughout the show. And in that show, it was kind of hard to get a good English voice acting that didn't sound robotic. But I can definitely say that Erica does not sound robotic, but she's also not making a joke out of the emotionlessness of her character. And that's a really hard line to walk. She still has all of the high-quality acting chops that she has shown in a lot of shows before. But in this one here, she's not allowed to use them for intense emotions or for extreme flowery phoneticism. She's got a big job to do, and I think what was trying to be portrayed by her performance is that her simplicity, Violet's simplicity in observing the world around her, her very blunt observations about the people and the environment, is exactly what the people she meets need, because she takes what should be obvious to the people around her and just says it in very plain terms, like the necessity of I can't even think of like a really good example, but all the episodes, she just says things in a very straightforward, blunt manner to the people around them, and those other people were so caught up in their problems and their hang-ups and about, I'm an orphan and my mother ran away and I just want to live to see Ailey's comet, and this interaction with Violet is what they need to like get over their baggage, as it were. So it's kind of like they took what would have been a flaw, because Violet's not a deep person, she's a very simple person in that regard, and they make it a character strength, which is very interesting. So her impact on everyone around her is really what they need to get better. Now, what does that mean about Erica's actual performance? Well, it means that I appreciate what Erica did in this role. I'm just not sure that I quite appreciate the character as she was actually written, because she's definitely supposed to be empathetic in what she went through in the war, and then trying to adjust to civilian life. It's just not the part that grabbed me the most, you know? It was the part that created the core of what moved the story along and what created the individual episodes, but it's just not what grabbed me personally. Probably best exemplified by the fact that the final 2 episodes are all about the war. Mm-hmm. It's all about a small faction trying to blow the bridge up and stop the wedding that's going to unify the countries together. And that part just wasn't as interesting as the individual characters who are trying to convey their thoughts in writing, or cope with dead parents or dying parents or dead children. And that's okay. I think that's okay, because you're supposed to take something out of the show, and if you took nothing out of it, like you said, Lilac at the top, if you took nothing out of the show, no emotions at all, then you're not watching the show right. So the fact that Violet is not as interesting as some of the other characters is just kind of an evil of the way the show was written. But I don't really have anything bad to say about Erica's performance. She's got a standard contemplative female voice with slight lilting in it to show her youth, and honestly, the best part that I can say is that she does totally lose her inhibitions when she finds out that Gilbert has died, and you take all of those emotions that have kind of been building up inside and just explode with complete mental breakdown. So I'm glad that the show gave her that opportunity to kind of like flex that chop. I guess that was a bit of a backhanded insult in terms of talking about Erica, but I think what I'm trying to vocalize is that I can't think of a way I would have improved the acting on this. It is the best iteration of this that we were ever going to get.
Okay. As for what I think of these two, I think Kyle McCarley as Claudia is really interesting. There's something about the tone that he has that's really different than what I think I'm used to hearing of Kyle. It's much gruffer and rougher and much more tired. Like, I'm not even sure how old he is, but he feels like somebody who's been worn out by war, and rightfully, justifiably so. It's like he watched friends and family all pass away and die in the line of duty, and it's gotta take its toll and do stuff to you. But even then, he has a new business. He's trying his best. He's doing his best. And the opportunities he has. I think Kyle in general is a really interesting fit for this character, and there's a lot about him that's really wise and interesting, and he's a good character to help with Violet. And the things he says about the burns of past that just stick with you, and that you won't realize it till it happens, that these burns are going to stick with you. And that's really interesting to me, and just about the regrets and fears that she has. And I really thought Kyle did a splendid job with Claudia. Now Violet. Violet is really interesting. I feel this is a challenging role to try and get to work in regards to like what you're going to convey, or what you're going to, how you're going to play the character. Like, I think Erica plays this character straight-laced, very much naive a little bit at times, but also very stoic. But she is more than just that. She is full of kindness, and she is full of loyalty. She is so full. And she has so many of these emotions, this happiness, this sorrow. It's sincere, earnest, and kind of quirky in how she views the world, in the way she acts, in the way she talks. And feels so much. And when she realizes how she's coping with the major, or how she's realizing once and for all that she was burning and she is still burning, and just the climax of episode 9 where she realizes how much influence she has and the greater emotional things that she accomplishes, it really shows how far she's come. The delivery on some of these lines when she's crying in regards to the kid that she wrote the letters from her mom, or the soldier, she was afraid. And yeah, it's some of the best dramatic like outbursts I've heard from Erica Harlacher, and I think this is such a strange but powerful performance that Erica really gives this character. I can see the problems with the show and this character, but I do argue that at the very least, I think she is still interesting and capable enough that when you see her interact with all different characters and scenarios, it does still work for me. But I could definitely see the problems of her being like strange, or just that she herself isn't as compelling as a lot of her other contemporaries, and I totally get that. That said, I think Violet still worked for what the show needed, and I really do like a lot of her dynamics with other characters, though I will admit I was still less engaged, I think, with her main narrative than I think I was with the one-off stuff. But she's just a real interesting character that I like seeing interact with other people in general. That it's really powerful, and this really is stellar job. Like, her coming into her own and being her own person is an interesting journey, and I like how the show could have just been about her love-struckenness for Gilbert, but it feels like it's more about her actually like moving on from her guilt and regret of the past and becoming a new person who is allowed to do these things, who is allowed to enjoy these things, who is allowed to help others instead of take. And I think that's really, really something.
And to be fair, that is a problem that a lot of people who try to reintegrate after coming out of the military service do have to deal with.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have to wonder, like, I would like to actually talk to someone who's seen this show and has actually served in the military, and to get their input about whether or not it felt reflective of what their time return to society was actually like.
There's a video I should actually show you of someone who kind of did like a little interview with a military veteran who was who's now currently working at their business as a security, like head of security there. I should send that to you. It's very interesting, like because they do ask the questions about like how has it been like trying to like return to civilian life after serving in the military, and it's very interesting. I'll have to send it to you.
The point, as I was saying, I very, very impressed with all the different intricacies and sides to Violet Evergarden's character that I think Erica pulled off, and she really, really, really impressed me with a lot of these moments. Now, it's time for us to move on to final thoughts, both of the show and of the dub itself. Amon, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this dub. I went into the show not really knowing anything about it. I remember people were really disappointed that its premiere in the United States was going to be delayed because of Netflix's distribution model, and that was basically it. I knew nothing else about it. And I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I don't have a lot of background in sort of Kyoto Animation's sort of more melodramatic stuff. But as far as an example of this go, I thought this went really well. Like my enjoyment of the show never ended up dipping into like irony, like this is so over the top and goofy anything like that. It stayed very sincere, and I do think the dub helped a lot with that. I think it just did a wonderful job of balancing the emotions of the show and all the tones it's supposed to hit, and casting good actors in the roles that were necessary. And like I said, I think a lot of props go to Erica for having a very tough acting job, and I think pulling it off marvelously. I really enjoyed this show, even though I don't know if I was expecting to as much. So just props all around for making just a really good show and a really good dub on top of that.
So couldn't catch on that too quickly. To kind of sum up all of my thoughts, with all of the crying I've done, with all the praising I've done, this is a really good show. It's a really good show. It's a really good dub. I enjoy the themes, the complex themes the show itself has with its take and look on war, and on how it how it results in like grief, like a need for peace, a desire to live, and trying to push past all of that. I appreciate all of that, and the show and the dub itself is absolutely phenomenal to me. There are little intricacies here and there that if one wrong move or one misstep could have ruined the show, and could have probably ruined the experience. And it didn't do any of that to me. And it got to a point, of course, again, where it hit me very personally. And it resonated a lot, both with the story and with a character or two in there. And I just really appreciate the show a lot, and the dub just really elevated it so much, to the point where, like I said earlier, it's probably, as of right now, it's one of my favorite English dubs of the year so far. And the show is definitely one of my favorite shows of the year so far as well. So, having gone into the show without dealing or being a part of any of the hype, that's the best way to go. I know that's difficult, but if you go into the show with fresh eyes and not knowing too much about it, that's where you're going to get the most and the best experience out of it. So this show, definitely, you should really see it, and the English dub is absolutely phenomenal.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt
Wow,
me.
really?
Don't hurt
God
me
damn it.
no
Stop.
more.
You're on a roll tonight, aren't you, Noah?
I'm resisting the whole... Yes, I have. Glad you
God
noticed.
damn it.
So, this is a show that I really enjoyed more than I thought I would. And I'm not even, like, a huge KyoAni fanboy. Like, I wasn't one of the two people who marathoned all of Myriad, Phantom Colors, or whatever that
Neither
show
am
was.
I. Still
That
haven't
show is the That show is the definition of a 5 out of 10.
Nice.
So I've been told. So in coming to this show, I was like, okay, I don't know what it's about, but I know that I want to watch it just because it looks pretty. But I did not expect that it was going to have strong individual episodes about characters moving past their grievances through the power of words. And that is something that was really refreshing to me, because in the animation medium, visuals are usually the key thing that people focus on. You know, how pretty is the Sakuga, and how many frames do they cram into this, and how many camera movements can we get into a single hand-drawn frame. And this time here, it's that, but it's also about the power of words to move people, and that is something that I feel like is underrepresented a lot, especially in our visual-based society. So for that alone, I can highly recommend the show. The dub does that justice. Like, the people who adapted this did a good job in adapting to the different styles of the different kinds of episodes. To shift from an astronomy episode to a playwright episode to a royalty shenanigans and posting their thoughts on Twitter episode. All of that within the span of a show that was consistent in how it was directed and written, and really fun to listen to throughout. Like, I could easily recommend this over the sub, just because you will appreciate the language a lot more of that. Any problems that I have with characterization of Violet or any other characters that just didn't have as many interesting parts to them, that's okay, because this felt like a very fully fleshed out world that I could easily see us making more visits into. And I think we're actually getting a movie coming up that will...
A movie has been confirmed for 2020, yes.
Yeah, as exploring this more. So, and that's good, because I feel like there's a lot more stories you could tell in this world. Honestly, I'm just really glad that I got a chance to watch it. And I would recommend... I'm not sure I'd say it's my favorite it's one of my favorite dubs of the year. Just because everyone is consistently strong throughout. There wasn't like one standout performance of them all. But I will say that if anyone is looking for a good anything on Netflix to binge right now, this is definitely one I can point them to.
Okay. I'll say this. In a way, from what I've heard and what I've been told, perhaps expectations were a tad too high for this, potentially, for me, in regards to my opinions and enjoyment. I think this is a show I like, but do not love. And I think there's some parts about it that are a little odd, or maybe a little cheesy, like the I want to learn what I love you means is a little on the nose, but I think the elements that go into it makes it very interesting. A lot of the world is unique, the characters, the premise and setting, and I do enjoy a lot of what this show has to offer, even if I'm not always in love with like the main narrative. But I think this is a really enjoyable show. I think its dub is really strong. It's got some problems here and there, but the ones when it's firing on all cylinders, I think it's really firing really well, and I think it's definitely really solid. And I enjoyed it a lot. I definitely think if you like interesting dramas or unique settings with odd characters, it is definitely worth your time. It is a gorgeous show, and it's an enjoyable show. I do like its dub, and yeah. And with that, I think we can call it a night. If you would like to follow the Dub Talk podcast, you can subscribe, like, comment, and subscribe on our own YouTube channel. You can also find us over on Twitter, Tumblr, Twitch, etc. at Dub Talk Podcast. As for the rest of us, you can find me I'm over on Twitter at MangaMan9000 under the name Classy Spartan, and I do this, and I do another podcast called Podcast O&A, where we talk about anime news and the like. Now, plug yourselves.
You can find me at Twitter at AmonDuelUS. Duel has 2 U's in it. I talk about movies and anime and comic books. And sometimes I have strong opinions and sometimes I don't. I have a dusty old song for you all. I originally had a long spiel to go with it, but it's late.
It's late.
So I'll just if you want a song that represents losing someone you love during an old-timey war, you'd be hard-pressed to do better than Forever Autumn by Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues. And if you want to learn all about how that's from a musical version of The War of the Worlds, the H.G. Wells novel that was made in the mid-'70s, ask me about it on Twitter. I'll tell you all about it.
All right. Steph?
Yes, my name is Stephanie, or sometimes people refer to me as Lilac. I am on Twitter at Lilac Anime Review, with review being spelled REVUE, where I essentially just talk about daily life and the daily struggles of an adult, basically, as well as my desire to either want to hug or punch Andrew for making me watch this damn show. It was a mixed reaction, but, yeah, that's where you pretty much find me.
And Noah, what about you?
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to contemplate the War of the Worlds musical
Oh my
here.
God.
Damn it. We don't have time. We're sleepy.
All right. Sorry. The people in the wings are telling me to wrap it up. I am Noah Clue, and you can follow me on Twitter at Noah Clue, where I drop some hot takes on the world of animation and also post pictures of my children. I also have a YouTube channel, which is Journey Traveler, that I am actually have a couple scripts for stuff I'm working on right next to me. If I can find the free time to get those done, cheery on, and then we will have a better world.
All right.
Like real cartoons.
And with that, I think it's time to call it
Not
a night.
quite. You're forgetting one thing.
What am I
Even
forgetting?
though it's completely obvious, where can...
You can find us on YouTube.
No,
at
you did that. Even though it's completely obvious, where can people watch Violet Evergarden?
Oh, you can watch Violet Evergarden legally on Netflix.
Huzzah. I imagine...
And if you don't have a subscription to Netflix, you can register for a free 2-week trial.
Or you can bum off your family like everybody else does.
I mean, the other
Pretty
thing
much.
is, at the time of this episode recording, obviously there's no home video release, though considering how some of the Netflix exclusives like Seven Deadly Sins and Ajin have had physical releases.
It might get one down
Exactly.
the road, but we're going to have to wait
For
and
right
see.
now, though, Netflix is the only way where you can watch the series.
All right.
And if there is a home video release, hopefully it will come with the episode 14 OVA, which we have not been able to watch yet.
And hopefully we'll get the movie down sooner or later. And with that, thank you all for watching. And I hope our words could reach you. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Otaku on, my friends.
Good night, nerds.
Aloha.